exuded confidence that he will win the presidential poll on August 9th, however raised concerns that his opponents have publicly been declaring that if he wins, President Kenyatta, who has already endorsed his political rival Raila Odinga for presidency, will not hand over power to him. Ruto reiterated that he is confident that the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission chairperson Wafula Chebukati will deliver a fair, free and credible election as long as the commission is well resourced. Meanwhile, the Orange Democratic Movement leader Raila Odinga is scheduled to deliver a lecture at the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, during his visit to the United Kingdom, slated to commence after March 12th. The London-based Policy Institute confirmed the engagement after Deputy President William Ruto delivered his lecture on democracy. Odinga is expected to jet out of the country after the unveiling of the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate on March 12th. Details concerning his tour have remained scanty. Now, Kenya Kwanza allied leaders are asking the National Government Administration officers and public servants to stop interfering with the mandate of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission as it prepares to manage the upcoming election. Ford Kenya leader Moses Wetangula, MPs Rigathi Gachagua, Kithure Kindiki, Isaac Mwaura, Ndindi Nyoro and Ketu Waruguru, and UDA's chairperson Johnson Muthama said that the functions of the commission are exclusive and that Kenyans should be left to exercise the democratic right at the ballot. The leaders were speaking as they launched several development projects and campaigns for Kenya Kwanza. Now, Moderna has signed an agreement with Kenya to set up its manufacturing plant in the country, the first in Africa. The President Uhuru Kenyatta said Kenya is pleased to partner with Moderna in the establishment of the manufacturing facility to help prepare the country and its neighbors on the continent through the African Union to respond to future health crises and have stave off the next pandemic. Kenyatta said the partnership is a testament to the capabilities of our community and our commitment to technological innovation, and that Moderna's investment in Kenya will help advance equitable global vaccine access and is emblematic to the structural development that will enable Africa to become an engine of sustainable global growth. Now, Kenya health sector unions have threatened an industrial action if the Salaries and Remuneration Commission (SRC) does not seize its intended action to abolish allowances for health workers protected under the 2017-2021 collective bargaining agreement. The Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union Secretary General Davji Atela says that the SRC, through the allowances policy guidelines for the public service dated October 7, 2021, intends to abolish job-related and labor market adjustment allowances payable to medical doctors, pharmacists, dentists, and other health workers in the public service. The Kenya Union of Clinical Officers Secretary General George Kibode endorsed KMPDU's position. The allowances policy guidelines seek to, among other things, streamline allowances and ensure that the proportion of basic salary to gross salary is not less than 60%. Now, 32 persons involved in the sad event that saw a female motorist accosted and sexually assaulted have been arrested. Police spokesperson Bruno Shosa says that 12 motorcyclists have been impounded and that the suspects will be arraigned in court today. Those arrested, he said, are helping the police with investigations and that all participated in this shameful act will be arrested and charged. Now, as we observe the International Women's Day today, we realize and acknowledge the greatness that women come with in every aspect of life. This year's theme, Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow, speaks to the need that the world needs to appreciate women as equals in every aspect of life, recognize the contribution of women and girls around the world who are leading the change on climate change, adaptation, mitigation, and response to build a more sustainable future for all. We see the women in politics who continue to change the conversation for the betterment of the society, the CEOs who are driving the industries and leading markets, the mothers who are raising fine young men and women, those who are serving in the disciplined forces and challenging the narrative. As we observe this day, we are saddened by the continued belittling of women, the constant harassment and violence meted on women. It is why we all ask that we stand together and protect women, promote equality, and ensure that we all promote humanity and respect the woman. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
SpiceFM, Nyeri. The following takes place between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, Tuesday morning. And what does it look like on these streets? Not bad, actually. Going through onto Uhuru Highway, out into the city centre, out towards Westlands, that looks pretty all right. Starting to see some build up on Jogo Road, but nothing too crazy. Gong Road free and clear as you're trying to get into the city, and Langata Road is also looking pretty good as well. Let's take a look at the Thika Super Highway, where it's already starting to build up just past the Utali Drift, but nothing crazy yet again. Kiambu Road also looking really good as it does on Limuru Road. On Wayaki Way is where you see the most of the traffic this morning, as well as the Eastern Bypass, which is already starting to clog up just a little bit here and there. But again, just a dull roar of things at 6 minutes after 6 o'clock. Let's see what it looks like in about half an hour. What are we trying to do today? Keep things moving. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Talk to us there or text on 40127.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up,
8 minutes after
not
6.
down.
How you doing?
This is
Good
the
morning and welcome to
Situation.
Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, Tuesday, the 8th day of March, 2022. We're all here and we are glad that you're tuned in this morning, locked in from wherever you are. Ndu, how was Monday?
That was yesterday, right?
Yes,
It was all right.
it was, huh? All right.
It was all right.
Just that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
How are you?
City,
Good morning.
how are you?
Fine, thank you.
You know this look of yours, but
See, that smile on your face is stellar. But I'm, leaning towards there's something mischievous behind that smile.
Okay.
you've got a tune.
There's something coming.
You have a tune in your head.
I can
I
see it.
have a song.
Oh, voila.
Hey, Twende.
Forget.
Oh,
This
come on.
kill the
I
anticipation.
can see
I
it
said
coming.
I have the song.
Yeah.
I didn't say I have the song for the two of you.
Coming after me. Ngwa. Da-da-da-da-da, and it won't set
that
me
song
free.
Nigerian? So where does Ngwa come in? Is it part of the song?
Ngwa is like, come on, friend, yalla, imshe. I can say it in how many languages can I say it in?
Ngwa.
Valon. Oniva. Vamos.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest
You didn't
conversation.
answer my question.
Which one?
How are you?
I'm fine.
Oh, super.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
So today is International Women's Day.
Indeed it is. Happy International Women's Day.
Just a day. I'm sure it's a
day
month.
to commemorate.
I'm sure it's the entire
There's some
month.
women who've been celebrating International Women's Day for the last...
I'm
I don't
sure
know
it's
how
the
long.
entire month of March. There's no way they'll just take a day.
I don't
There's
even
a-
have anything to say to that.
There's a lot to celebrate.
There is.
Now you have something to say. And oh God. We'll have conversations today around International Women's Day. celebrating various aspects of International Women's Day. At 7 o'clock, we'll be joined by two ladies. Who are they, Ndu?
Well, community or feminist activists will be in the room with us, and we'll also be joined by an academic. So the two ladies that we'll be talking with at that hour are Dr. Agoy Lois and Dita Oching, and we'll be talking about breaking the bias on International Women's Day.
That's the theme for this year's International Women's Day, isn't
Indeed.
it? Breaking the bias, looking at various types of biases. Okay. At 8, we have another conversation, gender equality and women refugees for a sustainable tomorrow. That's talking about the plight of women refugees in the country and around the world. We'll be joined by two people, one from the International Rescue Committee, that is Jamin Kuswania, and we'll also be joined by Executive Director of Pamoja Trust, Samuel Orlando. Keep it here for that conversation and more. Plus, of course, you've got to reflect that video that did the rounds yesterday, the harassment of that lady by the border operators, which also led to the emergence of various other clips of just harassment of motorists on the road by these other road users called border operators. And wow, crazy. Let's look at COVID in numbers. How are we doing as a country? Okay, you'll tell us about the world and then the country.
All right, let's start with the country since that was your first port of call. 19 new cases in Kenya from a sample size of 3,293. Slightly higher positivity rate now to 0.6%. We're looking at 0 recorded deaths on the day. And a total now of 13,829 recoveries. Let's look at the vaccines that are available in the country now at 27 million. With the latest tranche from Pfizer, that puts us at 27,047,910. Uptake, total doses administered, 16,883,282. Total first doses are about half of that. And so fully vaccinated above 18 years, about half of that. Closer to 1 million shillings of the Pfizer vaccine having been administered to children between the ages of 15 and 18. And booster doses just north of 250,000 cases. So now, 28.3% of the population has now been vaccinated.
Fully vaccinated.
28%
of adult population.
Fully vaccinated.
Okay.
So possible to get to 50% by June, which is what we were trying to see if it could be done. Very possible. Let's wait and see. So we're looking at about, it's always been that there are about 11 or so million vaccines available in the country for uptake and for use. So the encouragement continues to be go out and get vaccinated. What's happening?
Is the conversation happening around lifting of some of these measures?
The conversation is happening.
Mandatory masking and
especially the decriminalization of mask use. If that conversation is happening, look, from the list that we saw of the things that could have been touted by the Ministry of Health, there's likelihood that there's truth in that, but they're just not ready to announce it.
They should.
Yeah, I think it's the time. I don't know what we are waiting for. Even if it wasn't happening around the world, we've been able to see from these statistics how things have been over the last 6 months. The rest of the world is doing this, from Canada to Scotland, the United Kingdom. We're looking at Western Europe, even Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, in China, we've seen the highest number of cases of COVID in the last 2 years on one day. And guess how many that is? 16.
Okay.
So, there's a general decline the world over. Is it time to review those measures? Absolutely. Is it time to decriminalize in Kenya? It definitely is. What are we waiting for? That remains a question that is not being given an answer.
The fact of the matter is people are no longer masking in the country.
Anyway, exactly.
Yeah.
However, it's still being held over their heads that should you be caught without a mask, you can be prosecuted.
I've reduced the use of masking, actually, personally. I've got to confess. Because, look, everything else that's happening, if we are following what's happening around the world, then there's nothing that justifies why I must wear a mask.
True. Except you're asked to. And I will confess as well, going into a public place is when I've been wearing a mask. Going into a mall building, where is your mask?
And just because they'll tell you where you must have a mask.
Exactly.
Because we are expected to ask you to have a mask on. But
I'll have a box of masks if they're available. I'll put it on when I'm asked to. But in terms of in my mind that, okay, so this thing is still potent, is still in the air, that has flown out of my mind. And I dare say that it has flown out of the minds of many.
But even more importantly, for the longest time, because of factors related to mask wearing like cost, many people were not wearing masks.
No.
They wore it more as, should we say, a cautionary. It's a tool you used in case you come across the police.
Yep.
Right.
But
you had it so you wouldn't get arrested.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's really what it was.
Yeah.
But beyond that, they didn't wear it. So, given time when, first of all, when the curfew was lifted, what do you think people heard? It was curfew, but what do you think they heard?
COVID is over.
Yes, exactly.
We're free to move on.
The number of people who talk to me and say, you don't know that COVID is over. I said, COVID is what?
Yeah.
It's over. In their minds, it's over. And you walk around. How often do you nowadays see people wearing masks? Even here, where we work.
It's
How
rare.
often do you see people wearing masks?
It's rare. It is rare.
Remember those early days when you couldn't get into the canteen without someone telling you, excuse me, please wear a mask? Went. No one has lifted those requirements, but people are conducting their business as though those requirements no longer exist.
They should be lifted.
I don't know why we're dilly-dallying with this.
They should be lifted forthwith. Anyway.
Okay, so really quickly, let's look around the world. 450 million cases of COVID, 6 million deaths, 381 million recoveries. So it's interesting to see, we look at those numbers. Clearly, there have been more recoveries than there have been deaths. The deaths, painful as they have been, the recoveries far outweigh the deaths globally. And this is the global conversation right now, as you're saying, Eric. Everybody's talking about lifting of bans, restrictions, opening up borders, Canada, Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, everybody. And if you look at the continent, South Africa, Egypt, everybody's saying, okay, let's get back to life as normal. And then let's be able to live with this thing. So come on, guys, get on the train and let's move.
18 after 6. We are live streaming the show on SpiceFM KE on Facebook and YouTube. Are you online? If you are, even if you are on Twitter, say hello. We'll be doing a roll call shortly after we take a look at the weather forecasts.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Have you seen them? Am I lying?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone in Wasingishu was asking me, what channel is SpiceFM?
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
We'll have a clear morning in Nairobi at 16, highs of 28, back down to lows of 16 today. Clear at 15 in Nakuru, highs of 29 and lows of 13. Mostly clear at 13 in Nyeri, highs of 28 today. 28 will also be the high in Eldoret, where it's currently clear at 12. Mostly clear in Mombasa at 26, highs of 32 today. And we'll see clear conditions in Malindi as well, with highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's clear in Kisumu at 20, highs of 31 and lows of 19, while in Kakamega 17 and clear, highs of 32 today, back down to lows of 15. Kampala is clear at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 19, while clear conditions in Dar es Salaam at 27, highs of 32 and lows of 26. Lagos is clear at 28, highs of 33 and lows of 27, while we have clear conditions at 12 in 15 in Johannesburg. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 15. Looking out into Beijing, 10 degrees and sunny. Well into Tuesday afternoon, we'll see highs of 17 and lows of 2. It's -1 in Paris. It's clear, however, highs of 13 and lows of -1. London, clear at 2, highs of 11, back down to lows of 2. Severe thunderstorms happening in New York Monday night. Likely to see 5 more. There's a red warning. We'll see highs of 21 and lows of 6.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
20 minutes
Nairobi.
after 6. Who's online?
Good morning. Agola Linda says, how are you? This is Sir Haran, tuned in from Thordburo. 102.5.
Just go at it.
Say it again.
Thordburo.
Spell it.
Thurdburo.
Thordburo.
There is where Sir Haran is this morning.
According to her.
Thordburo.
D. It's a place.
It's mean what?
It's a place or something or the other, but I'm not sure.
Where is it? Where is the place?
I think it's somewhere in South Nyanza.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Eddie Oduor is saying good morning, and he's a bit miffed today. He says, good morning, my spice therapist. I'm up and listening in Kuru, but very disappointed to hear the deputy president deny he did not help craft the Jubilee cabinet. What a lie! What a shame. Heh? Feeling deceived and shameful this morning, Eddie. Jane Jesh is in the room this morning. Thomas Onundu, we see you. Collins Yagan says we'll interview him one day. Okay. Although Caleb says happy International Women's Day to you too. It's a celebratory day for everybody. Patrick Fikirini says good morning from Mombasa. Njoro in Egerton, well presented by Alex. And Godfrey says good morning as well. Victor, Peter, Benson, Momo, we see you. Ashley, good morning to you as well. Ken Mukana, good morning from Alexandria in Egypt, where that proverb came from.
The long story one.
The book, the chapters. Very International Women's Day to you. Victor says good morning. Roger Sly, Robert Mbogo, Odero Jr. Everybody's up this morning. Thanks for joining us and good morning.
Yeah, a message also from Rutherford who says, good morning everyone at Spice. It's that time of the year again. Help me wish my son, Coltrane, all the best as he sits his KCPE at the Riera Springs Academy just next door to you. All right. And all the class of 2021 across the country sitting KCPE this year, all the best from Rutherford. For Ndu, and indeed all the exceptional women, we celebrate you. Have a fantastic day.
Voila.
Rutherford, last year when KCPE was being sat, he also had a son.
He still has a son.
He has another son sitting KCPE.
Wow.
No, somebody has actually chimed in and explained to me that it's Thur. Thur is actually a hill. Yes. Dibuor says is a place where dreams come true.
How about that?
Thur Dibuor.
Yes. See.
It's a place where dreams come true.
Yes.
So can you have a Dibor anywhere?
I have a friend called Maxwell who listens to this show every morning. And he also comes from my neck of the woods, so he understands this language.
Ah, voila.
Infinitely better than I do, clearly.
Thur Dibuor.
You want to go to the place where dreams come true?
Oh, yes.
Doesn't everybody?
City?
Yes.
The day's proverb?
We're still in Morocco. And then tomorrow we move to another country and sample their proverbs.
Okay.
I was stuck between two proverbs. So since I was stuck between two proverbs, I'm going to mention both of them. Okay. The first one I liked because it gave truth a romantic twist. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. It's pleasing. Not entirely true. Sometimes an honest answer
can be painful.
Completely distressing. Okay?
Sometimes a kiss on the lips can be completely distressing as well.
It can be
This is
absolutely
true.
distressing.
This is very true.
Absolutely
Yes,
distressing.
yes. Oh, traumatizing even. But anyway,
Absolutely.
moving
But both
on.
of them are honest. That's the point.
Yes. And what we're also saying about it here is also honest.
Yes.
Okay. While we are still on the topic of honesty, this one is also an honest statement.
Oh, there's another one.
Yes,
All
I told you that. I was
Yes, you
stuck
did. You
between
did
two.
say it, right.
He who lacks knowledge, they who lack knowledge, he, she who lacks knowledge, okay, derides his neighbor. But the man, woman of understanding holds their tongue.
It's International Women's Day. We can donate it to that gender.
Right.
She
Right.
who?
She who lacks knowledge, thank you very much, Eric, derides her neighbor. But the woman of knowledge holds her tongue.
Which one would you vote for of the two proverbs?
Both.
This is what happens when you live in Kenya for a long time. you hear
You want everything.
You hear 6 P's.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. In fact, a building is even called a counter suit, and you're wondering, counter suit.
Let me follow the proverb and hold my tongue.
like the wise person.
The wise person that I am.
You are. Let's look at the newspaper headlines. Remember, you can access the Standard e-paper on www.standardmedia.co.ke or get the app, the Standard e-paper app, on Play Store and App Store, wherever you are. Okay, what's in the headlines?
Well, okay. So the Deputy President saying many things, but let's look at something slightly more important right now.
Yes.
And that candidates fight odds as 1.2 million children sit KCPE. In Baringo, interestingly enough, gun-wielding bandits attacked an area near a school, shooting at villagers as learners were sitting their exams. In Lugari, some candidates were allowed to take national exams, although they had not been registered, and a 62-year-old convict serving a life sentence is among prisoners doing the exam. So, of course, yesterday was that day that started. The KCPE kicked off in the morning, and it was just painful to see that there's students who are writing an exam, and just a stone's throw away, there's a sound of gunshots. And the question is, how then were they able to do this and do it right? Coming back to our conversation of yesterday, that who's caring for them? The insecurity experiences in Baringo South reared its ugly face again when armed bandits raided Kapkosom village in broad daylight, scaring candidates who were writing their national examination at 2 nearby schools. Villagers were forced to flee for safety as gunshots rented the air at the village, where the attackers burnt a motorcycle and shot indiscriminately at fleeing villagers. The Kenya Certificate of Primary Education exams that were ongoing at the Kapkachir and Kanir primary schools were disrupted temporarily due to the sound of heavy gunshots. Armed security men who were deployed at the institutions cocked their guns ready for action as they scoured the school vicinity for any danger. It took the 3 officers a few minutes to realize that the bandits had entered a homestead nearby and touched a motorcycle. The exams continued, however, uninterrupted. Tension remained high in the area, with learners having to endure the unending sound of gunshots coming from either the bandits or the security forces. Locals could be seen fleeing their homes in Kapkosum village. While the locals fled, candidates writing the English language papers at Karni Primary School went into a panic mode, but later continued with their exams after assurance from police officers and government officials supervising the exams. This was a tough one. So the question, then you go...
So how far was the attack from the school?
It was just a village away, according to them. So it was a nearby village. So we're talking about a walk away, literally. And it was close enough for learning or the exams here to be disrupted, right? And where they were in the school, they could see people fleeing. So we're talking about within village. All right.
This is what we were talking about yesterday. I mean, these children, do you think they were able to sit back and concentrate? It's okay. It's
over. Yeah. How?
And this is a national exam. And it's timed. I mean, you don't have all day.
No. This was the first paper.
It's timed.
Yeah.
The paper must be completed within X. So we have had a disruption of, let's say, 20, 30 minutes. We shall come back and continue and extend by 20, 30 minutes. But is that enough? I honestly don't think that these children in these particular restive areas should be sitting their KCPE or KCSE.
No, they're not being given a fair shake, unfortunately.
Now.
They're not.
Because those kids, so after the exam, they went home.
Yes. And they're going to wake up today and come back for their exams again at 8:30 without knowing what the situation is going to be. There are people who fled their homes yesterday. So you can imagine if you're writing your exam and you're thinking, it could be my parents, it could be my home, it could be my neighbor kind of thing. And here you are sitting, writing an exam upon which your future depends, right? So you go home, you're going to bed at night. You're not really sure if they're going to try again because you're not sure the purpose or the cause of this unrest. Then you wake up, then you're supposed to be revising for the next day because that's what folks are often doing. These children are often going home and revising for the next day's exams. How do you do that with no peace of mind, with no equilibrium in terms of your senses? It's not happening. You wake up tomorrow morning, today now, to sit for an exam, unsure of what the security situation is. What is happening? Why is that the case for children under the age of 15? Children, any human beings at whatever age. You're not sure of your situation.
It's absolutely unnecessary for them to be subjected to this.
It would help tremendously if the Ministry of Interior could explain to us how it is that this problem, it's a daily, these bandits seem to have free reign.
Yep.
Can I tell you?
Please tell me.
The Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha said enough security personnel had been deployed in banditry-prone areas to ensure candidates sit exams in peace. He also said he is liaising, strategizing, consolidating with the Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, who has availed helicopters and deployed security officers in Kerio Valley to assure learners' security. According to the CS, all the candidates in insecure areas will be fed by the government and will stay in school until the exams are over. Yes? City?
You know, does it strike you as though security personnel have been deployed to this particular area?
There was an attack yesterday.
There was an attack and there was a response from them.
A response after the fact, isn't it?
Yeah.
The whole purpose of deploying security personnel is preventative, meaning so that they don't even get there.
In the first place.
Yes, so they attack and then you are there, of course. Look, something is happening here which I don't understand. We have more security personnel than we have bandits in the country.
Yeah.
Okay? So, are we saying these bandits are better trained, better equipped? What are we saying?
Better motivated.
What are we saying?
That we're not giving it priority.
Because
not giving it
how is it that the security forces are playing catch up?
Not giving it attention because it's not on the priority list. I keep telling you.
And it's not in one place. This one is not just spotlight here. So is it a roving group of bandits? Let's be in Kerio Valley this week. Or next week, let's go to Baringo.
I'm a bit bored here. Let's cross over to Samburu.
Yes, Samburu is getting a little tiresome. Let's go to Laikipia. I mean, what is it? The what is it question I'm asking for a very simple reason. We have had issues in this country with insecurity and bandits. Some will even give themselves a name and terrorize people, cut off their ears, cut off their noses. When the security forces decided to do something, it came to an end.
Yep.
Stopped, ceased. So.
Yep. Who's the godfather here?
Who is this person who is untouchable?
Yep. Who's the owner of this marauding gang?
And who are these? Well, let's ask, who are the bosses here? Because all these gangs in certain places, they, as I said, they seem to have free reign.
Yep.
What we hear of innocent people being killed every other day.
Yep. The perpetrators never get caught.
No, they don't.
It's 26 to 7. Let's take this quick break, take a look at the traffic. We will be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
To all the young women, the world is yours to discover and conquer. You are the future, leaders of your own world. Just like the women that came before you, it's your time to break the bias. Girls, run the world.
We run this mother. You are so much more powerful than you think. Hold your head up high.
Wherever my sisters left, I must take the mantle and run.
Never give up, keep fighting.
This week from the 7th to the 11th of March, join me, Yolanda Mulwa and DJ Absolute on Sugar and Spice as we celebrate women, that is music by women, movies by women, and conversations that empower women.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic
couple of minutes after 6:30
ballads.
and it's building up on Hu Highway and all the roundabouts going towards Haile
FM.
Selassie, out towards Kenyatta Avenue and then on towards Westlands. That's why we see traffic picking up. Also on Gong Road and bits and bobs here and there. Nothing too crazy just yet. It's also picking up on Langata Road today and we'll see that likely pick up in the next half hour or so. Jogo Road started pretty early and we're already seeing bumper to bumper action, especially around the train station. All right, Manyanja Road also picking up going towards Outer Ring. We're seeing the same thing on Juja Road. That started pretty early. Kangunda Road also, as coming out towards Outer Ring, that also has started to build up. The Eastern Bypass is going to be an issue every morning from what we see, and that continues even now. Going out then towards Roy is where we'll see that will continue. On Mombasa Road, we're looking at that Siokima area going just past the Way Bridge out towards the SGR, and likely see a pickup of that as we go along. So nothing too crazy just yet. yet, but if you're leaving now, it would be a good time. If you haven't, it would be a good time too. At half an hour from now, probably will not be less sticky. The sticky superhighway is also building up as you're getting towards Pangani. Keep an eye on things. Let us know also what's happening in your neck of the woods. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It is 24 to 7. Chris Amolo says, good morning to Nyaralego Siaya. Ndu Aoko.
Ce n'est pas moi.
Ndu Aoko. Happy International Women's Day. All right? Yes. You're Nyaralego Siaya.
Wow.
Nimetembea sijamuona msichana kama Okoh. So, let's do this one. Deputy President.
Okay.
See, he's been traveling the world. Now,
Yeah.
he was at Chatham House yesterday. This is where he spoke yesterday in London. And in a forum in the UK, Ruto said he had played no role in the second term, alleging that the president did not want him to play a significant role. He's dismissed the president's claim that he has failed in the ministerial dockets assigned to him in the first term, saying he never shared the responsibility of driving government with the president. I did not appoint any minister anywhere. He said, I did not appoint no minister anywhere. Everybody was appointed by the president. Unfortunately, in our second term, because of the political dynamics that came into play, the president told me that he wanted to do things differently. He did not want what had become normal in Kenya as Uhuruto. He wanted Uhuru. He said Uhuru wanted the second term to be about his legacy. Ruto says that he did not need Mr. Kenyatta to triumph in the August 9th elections, adding that his UDA will see him succeed in defeating Raila Odinga's ODM, whom he has termed as a project of the system and the deep state. But he's expressing fear that the president may not hand over power to him if he wins the election, calling on the international community to intervene. What we need is that our friends in the international community to speak to all candidates so that they can commit in public to accept the outcome of this election. The DP said his opponents have built their politics around personalities. But he says, Kwendeni yuko. I am asked, how will you succeed in your presidential campaign unless you have the support of Uhuru Kenyatta or the other guy? But he says he doesn't need them. He can go it alone. Also, the DP threw a barb at the court to Secretary General Francis Atwoli, all right? And he was talking about the job that he and Uhuru in their government, this one that he has just talked about saying
that they didn't do.
Yes.
Then now they did.
They wanted to bring in some reforms to the NHIF, okay? And they were blocked by Atwoli. Listen to what the Deputy President said.
When we came into office, we had 3.8 million people contributing to NHIF, right? And everybody was contributing 340 shillings or 320 shillings. Everybody, just like the 200 of NSSF. So we decided to say, okay, why don't we adjust so that the people who earn more, like Deputy President, can pay 5,000. So we changed the regulation, but we were taken to court by a stupid man called Atwoli. I have no regret to say he's a stupid man, because he is supposed to be representing the lower people.
I have no regrets. This is what they were doing in the first term. They wanted to raise the highest earners' contributions to about 5,000 shillings, retain the lowest earners' contributions to the 320 bob into it. But then Kotu and others went to court to block this. And that's why he has personal vibe and beef with the Secretary General of Kotu. But Atwoli, Nani, he responded.
Very fast.
This is what he said.
Or the anger between William Samoei Ruto with me is that I stopped him from stealing at NSSF. Simple. So he calls me names when he's in London. And you know when he's telling the whole world that Atwoli is the most stupid person, he's not saying Atwoli. Saying lawyers are very stupid people. Can lawyers produce a stupid person like me? Then he doesn't need lawyer vote. And if he doesn't need a lawyer vote, who will make him a president?
It is the political silly season.
Everybody's out to play.
Oh, yes. What are you looking at, CT?
Yeah. Okay. Russia-Ukraine conflict ruins Kenya's fuel subsidy.
Okay.
Wait for it. Business Daily headlines, bold black. Right. Kenyan fuel subsidy that has kept the pump prices unchanged for 4 months, just 4 months, 4 whole months in a row, has been crippled in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine war that pushed oil prices to a 14-year high. Really? Right. Government sources say the Treasury will struggle to pay oil marketers more than 25 billion over the next 2 months to keep pump prices unchanged despite the jump in the cost of shipping the commodity. Current fuel prices being consumed in Kenya is based on the average crude oil prices of $82.03 a barrel, and the monthly review set for the next year is 92, meaning gone up. Okay? 82 to 92 means it has increased by $10. $10 is a lot of money.
Okay.
Yesterday it jumped. That was the prediction, to 139 a barrel. The 139 is dollars. Okay? The highest level in almost 14 years. As the US hinted at a ban on buying Russian energy, appointed that the full impact of the rally will be felt in Kenya from April. I don't understand what these people are talking about.
You don't get it?
No, I don't. Let me just read it further.
You don't get it?
So that I don't get it further, okay? Officials at the Energy Regulator, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, reckoned that Treasury would require at least 10 billion, of course, this month and another 15 billion, of course, in April to compensate all marketers and to keep the local pump prices unchanged. I don't understand it.
What don't you get?
So we get our oil from Russia, is it?
No. Come on, CT.
Or we get it from Ukraine.
What else don't you understand? So you can.
Or the ship that transports the oil
has been blocked.
Has been blocked because it comes from either Russia or Ukraine.
Okay. So global oil prices have risen. They've jumped from 82 to 132. 139.
And this is US dollars per barrel.
A barrel. And they're set to go even further.
That seems to be it.
And actually I've seen the Russian foreign minister has said, you know what, all these threats that you're raising, just start telling your people the truth. You start imposing those sanctions on oil. You start blocking the access of gas through Nord Stream 1. Start telling your people to start preparing for $500 a barrel. Okay? Because the other people who supply the other 60%, Russia does 40% of energy in Europe, the guys who supply you the 60 are going to be sitting there gleefully raising the prices.
Of course.
It's a free market economy after all. Now, of course, the rises are coming. What I agree with you, I don't understand, is where the National Treasury would tell us, we have no money to cushion the subsidy.
No, they're preparing us to spend more money, which they're going to now want to recover by taxing us a little more.
Yes. Basically, the national government is saying, if the price jumps,
we will not be able to cushion you.
There's a certain ceiling that we cannot really afford to actually cushion
you. Exactly.
You see, if I didn't know how the world of oil and its production works, then I would say we have a problem. There are people who can cover for Russia's shortfall, because there will be a shortfall if there's this embargo. There are people who produce enough oil to cover for that shortfall.
Sure, but the big bad world of economics means that because you know there's a shortage on a certain side, that we're going to want to either, number one, hold on to the supply that we have, or raise the price because we know that it's going to be something that everybody now wants to get.
You know how quickly the West jumped on the embargo? Yeah. Even before Russia had fired a missile or crossed the border, we were already on sanctions.
Yes.
Not just threats, but we're going to do this. And they were all economic.
Yeah.
Okay? This is what I don't understand. So, every time we have a problem such as this one, I remember when the US invaded Iraq, similar stories were heard across the globe.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
And remember the time when Iraq attacked Kuwait. Again, there were similar
stories.
Yet, alongside these stories are similar stories of countries that produce more oil than they genuinely don't know what to do with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, talking about price, the world market oil prices are, should we say, balanced at some level.
Venezuela, which is
you know you're a magician.
Why?
I was going to Venezuela, but now that you've gone there, no, carry on, please.
Go to Venezuela.
Can somebody go, please?
Yes.
Okay.
Venezuela is an oil-producing country. And one of the problems that the country had was when we were told there was an oil glut, meaning more oil than we knew what to do with. But you then ask, did the oil in Venezuela vanish? It didn't vanish.
They still hold the world's largest reserves.
Yes. Did the oil in Nigeria vanish? No, it didn't.
Again, a country with huge undiscovered reserves.
Yes. So this story of shortfall. Okay, that's the allocation that was given to Russia for strategic, whatever logic you want to apply. This is a game being played by people who understand how economies work and also understand how to take advantage of volatile situations.
You are conspiratorial this morning.
No.
Just
a war starts.
Stop saying things. Just what are you saying?
The
exactly?
business mongers creep it. No, I'm simply saying, what has the war in Russia got to do with our oil prices in this country? What is it?
Because globally or in this country?
In this country, in our country. What has it got to do?
But we buy in the global market, City.
I understand.
If the oil in the global market has risen sharply, the price has risen sharply, owing to the fact that there is anticipated constraints in the supply chain. All right? Saudi Arabia has not said that they are ramping up their production. Have they? No. The other OPEC countries have not
Why
said
would they want to when they stand to make more money?
Exactly.
Now, do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
Conspiracy. There is enough oil on this planet to keep the prices of oil balanced, but that won't happen.
So are you saying that there's already speak of what could be an artificial shortage?
It is, of course,
force
it is
folks
artificial.
to raise the prices.
It is artificial. When you have a blight, when you have more rainfall than you need, when you have a drought and you don't have crops, and you're told the supply of this particular crop from this major producing area has gone down, that isn't false. It is real, you know. But it's also false when you consider that there are countries who produce more than they know what to do with, and to keep the produce and the value and the prices constant, they pay the farmers either not to produce or they dump what is produced in the sea.
Right.
It is false. It is false.
Well.
Oh, yeah. What are you looking at?
Okay, so we saw this unfortunate situation of a leaning building, the leaning tower in Kino, and it fell over leaned well into another one over the weekend.
Yep.
The National Construction Authority has said the Kino building collapsed due to its weak foundation. The 5-story building under construction leaned into an adjacent building Sunday night. There were no casualties, thank goodness. Mr. Maurice Akech, the NCA Executive Director, said all the signs point to structural failures. The NCA, of course, being the National Construction Authority. Since the collapse of the building, Akech said his team had been camping at the site searching for clues. He said the weak foundation caved in, bending beams that support the apartment that was under construction. There was no proper geotechnical survey, voila, which means the study of the soil structure to help the engineer know how much he could have done to have a stable structure, or he should have done to have a stable structure. According to the NCA boss, the soil test informs a lot in terms of materials to use. NCA said the approvals were right, but the procedure of construction was wrong. Procedure, process, issues. We need to test the quality of the materials and the workmanship as we determine the extent of the damage to the adjacent house, which has developed cracks already. Mr. Francis Mwangi, an engineer from the Horecon Construction who was at the site, concurred with Mr. Akech, saying the foundation was unstable. Mwangi said the near columns were poorly done for such a high-rise building. Karaoke, who is also an engineer, said the building did not have a basement. The surface foundation was not of uniform strength, which is why it caved and leaned in one direction. He said Kino is largely a red soil area. An excavation with intent to build a high-rise building should be given special attention. This is all said after the fact. There is a big difference between how we excavate cotton soil and what we do for red soils. Panicking tenants from the adjacent house are still moving their belongings as police try to keep away youth who are trying to cut away metal from the collapsed building.
Listen, so NCA is on site and NCA says we approved stuff on paper and we said we expected that this is what was going to be implemented on the ground. It wasn't. Who's in charge of inspecting?
Or supervising.
Oversight, to make sure that things are going.
It's them.
It's still them.
Then also, who's in charge of licensing the contractors? Everybody in the construction industry must get licensed by the National Construction Authority.
Yes.
From an artisan to an electrician
yes.
to ending up with a contractor. The contractor is the one who's in charge of the site. You're the one who's putting up this particular structure. Now, if the contractor has been licensed by the NCA, it means that the NCA has determined that you've met some certain threshold. I think we need to step back into NCA. So how are you licensing contractors? Number one. Number two, when you've licensed contractors, do you have mechanisms? And I remember, yes, we had a conversation with NCA Director Boss, and he was telling us capacity issues, right? Are they able to actually go around inspecting all the construction in the country, because all constructions fall under NCA? Are they able to do that?
Well, at the very least, I mean, here we have an assumption. I mean, what we said, yes, you gave your provisional certification or whatever, your provisional license, with the assumption that they were actually going to go ahead and do what we've asked them to do. But then, was there, again, that oversight? Did you actually go and check that this thing that we've allowed you to do, you actually followed procedure? Because it seems as if all this information is coming after the fact. Cotton soil excavation, red soil excavation, knowing that this area is red soil area.
No, they're passing the buck.
This is it. That's what I'm saying. You're now
the buck.
saying that you should have known. Well, who was making sure that this information, which you ought to have had, then was being followed? Look at this. You're now looking at millions gone to waste. More importantly, you're looking at another structure which may have followed procedure, then is also going to go at a loss. You have people moving out of their homes because you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. There's a building leaning into that. But then we have all this information coming out later. Somebody should have done. No, you who is saying somebody should have done were the one with the responsibility to make sure that those that you're licensing are actually following the rules.
You know, is this not typical? Remember when we talked about this road, Ngong Road? After the poor young lady passed away as a result of negligence on the part of the person who's charged with making sure that that road is what it was purposed to be, and those who are supposed to provide oversight?
Yep.
An apology. But the apology was a passing of the buck. Kenya just passed on the buck. Now, National Construction Authority is passing the buck. This one, you look for the contractor, you look for the owner, you look for those in the county government who gave whatever documentation that was required for this, the various departments and the people involved. There's a rubber stamp and a sign on that name.
Yep.
A signature, rather. Then you want to ask the authority, the people who are charged with this particular building in the National Construction Authority, all of them, that entire list of people, they have questions to answer.
It's too much.
Because it isn't just the building and the people are supposed to, the people next door and the owner of the building next door, that person is now incurring a loss.
Exactly. Huge. People are moving out.
Yeah, they did what they were supposed to do. Their building has been there for some time. Now, this other person is putting up a building next door and suddenly he's encumbered. And chances are, he put up that building with a loan.
Of course.
Of course. I mean,
and he's got to repay, and the bank doesn't care. I mean, are there issues with our building? No. So
can we just pay up?
So you pay.
Really
Now,
unfortunate.
Nakuru is now a city, remember? Elevated to a city. So how many cities do we have in country? Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and Nakuru. Now, because of Nakuru becoming a city, Naivasha is suffering. Ask me how.
Eric, how is Naivasha suffering as a result
of Nakuru becoming a city?
Thank you very much, members of the press, for coming. We thank you very much. We apologize for being slightly late, but we are beginning now. Hoteliers have started feeling the effects of the downgrading of Naivasha town by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Civil servants' daily subsistence allowance has been reduced at a time when the hospitality industry is picking up after closing down in COVID times. So, this is the story. So, you know, civil servants go for conferences, meetings, seminars, workshops.
All the time.
All those things that you call, whatever you want to call it.
All the time.
Whenever they're out of town, they receive a daily subsistence allowance.
Yes.
Now, SRC has said cities X, other towns X. For cities such as Mombasa, Kisumu, and Nairobi, and now Nakuru, the daily subsistence allowance is 22,000 for top officers and 4,200 for the lowest officers. The rates in a place like Naivasha are 18,000 for top officers and 3,500 for junior officers. 22,000 in a city, 18,000 in
a
town. 4,200 for the senior in a city, 3,500 for a senior in a town. How far is Nakuru from Naivasha? Just there, stone's throw away. So now very many government agencies are opting to hold their meetings in Nakuru, bypassing Naivasha. Naivasha hoteliers are like, oh, come on, surely now they're the ones who are suffering. When Nakuru became a city, the whole county was supposed to have benefited. And we are wondering why Naivasha has been left out.
Because Naivasha is not a city.
Naivasha has very many hotels that are basically set up for these MICE meetings.
Yes.
And now here they are.
But you know, Naivasha has always suffered. You know why? For the longest time, when you talk of Nakuru district, Naivasha was part of Nakuru district. Now, so Nakuru district was a massive, massive district. So, if there was a hospital in Naivasha, it was a sub-district hospital. And yet, Naivasha is actually a strong, bustling town with some serious economy. Now, you then come in with the county system, all right? Naivasha is still a sub-county.
Yes.
Okay? And yet, one of the richest sub-counties that the Nakuru county probably has. The complaint that the hoteliers have is not only valid, it is justified.
It's a big one.
Yes. Remember, horticulture is also nestled in Naivasha. Flower farms. Majority.
Naivasha.
Yep.
Government guys who are going to Nakuru, you can also understand them.
Government guys going to Mombasa.
4K more just because of doing an extra 70, 80 kilometers. Hey, let's go to Nakuru, bwana.
An hour.
Forget Naivasha.
Maximum.
Let's go to Nakuru.
Let's go to Nakuru. It's funny, but it's not funny. Sure you get.
Kunywa Cipladon.
I'm telling you.
Cipla. CP. For all the headaches. 1,000 mg and 500 mg.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll tell you more about Cipladon and where you can get Cipladon, why Cipladon is so good. It's effervescent. It works 2 times faster.
And you can get it?
We'll tell you where you can get it.
Okay.
Coming up in the next hour, we celebrate International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to everybody. We'll have 2 ladies joining us in the studio to talk about women in leadership, political leadership, especially this year when you're talking about politics, women in leadership, and what we need to do to make sure that we support all our women to positions of leadership. Good morning, 7 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Deputy President William Ruto has committed to accept the outcome of the August 9th presidential polls whether or not he wins. Speaking at the Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs in the United Kingdom on March's election, the Deputy President, however, sought a commitment on the peaceful transfer of power. The DP, who exuded confidence that he will win the presidential poll on August 9th, however, raised concerns that his opponents have publicly been declaring that if he wins, President Kenyatta, who has already endorsed his political rival Raila Odinga for presidency, will not hand over power to him. Ruto reiterated that he is confident that the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission chairperson, Wafula Chebukati, will deliver a fair, free and credible election as long as the commission is well resourced. Meanwhile, Orange Democratic Movement leader Raila Odinga is scheduled to deliver a lecture at the Royal Institute of International Affairs Chatham House during its visit to the United Kingdom, slated to commence after March 12th. The London-based Policy Institute confirmed the engagement of the Deputy President William Ruto delivered his lecture on democracy. Odinga is expected to jet out of the country after the unveiling of the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate on March 12th. Details concerning his tour to the UK have remained scanty. Now, Kenya Kwanza allied leaders are asking the national government administration officers and public servants to stop interfering with the mandate of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission as it prepares to manage the upcoming election. Ford Kenya leader Moses Wetangula, MPs Rigathi Gachagua, Kithure Kindiki, Isaac Mwaura, Ndindi Nyoro and Ketu Waruguru, and UDA's chairperson Johnson Muthama said the functions of the commission are exclusive and that Kenyans should be left to exercise their democratic right at the ballot. The leaders were speaking as they launched several development programs and campaigned for Kenya Kwanza. In particular, the leaders warned Interior PS Karanja Kibisho against using the government administrators to advance a certain political agenda. Now, Moderna has signed an agreement with Kenya to set up its manufacturing plant in the country, the first in Africa. President Uhuru Kenyatta said Kenya is pleased to partner with Moderna in the establishment of the manufacturing facility to help prepare the country and its neighbors on the continent through the African Union to respond to future health crises and stave off the next pandemic. Kenyatta said the partnership is a statement to the capabilities of our community and our commitment to technological innovation, and that Moderna's investment in Kenya will help advance equitable global vaccine access and is emblematic of the structural developments that will enable Africa to become an engine of sustainable global growth. Now, Kenya health sector unions have threatened industrial action if the Salaries and Remuneration Commission does not seize its intended action to abolish allowances for health workers protected under the 2017-2021 collective bargaining agreement. The Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union Secretary General Davji Atela says that the SRC, through the allowances policy guidelines for the public service dated 7th October 2021, intends to abolish job-related and labor market adjustment allowances payable to medical doctors, pharmacists, dentists, and other health workers in the public service. Now, 32 persons involved in the sad event that saw a female motorist accosted and sexually assaulted have been arrested. Police spokesperson Bruno Shioso says that 12 motorcycles have been impounded and that the suspects will be arraigned in court today. Those arrested, he said, are helping the police with investigations and that all that participated in the shameful act will be arrested and charged. The lady in the viral video is said to have been involved in an accident with a boda rider, after which the boda operators accosted and sexually assaulted her. Now, as you observe the International Women's Day today, we realize and acknowledge the greatness that women come with in every aspect of life. This year's theme, Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow, speaks to the need that the world needs to appreciate women as equals in every aspect of life. Recognize the contribution of women and girls around the world who are leading the change in climate change adaptation, mitigation and response to build a more sustainable future for all. We see the women in politics who continue to change the conversation for the betterment of the society, the CEOs who are driving the industries and leading markets, the mothers who are raising fine young men and women, those who are serving in the disciplined forces and challenging the narrative. As we observe this day, we are saddened by the continued belittling of women, the constant harassment and violence meted on women. It is why we are all asked to stand together and protect women, promote equality and ensure that we all promote humanity and respect for women. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
SpiceFM. Nakuru.
2 minutes after 7 o'clock, and it's already building up on Uhuru Highway. That started earlier on, but we see a mishmash of traffic within the CBD. Heading out towards Westlands, and that's going to continue for some time. Thika Superhighway has piled up significantly. Where there was no traffic before, we're seeing it going way past the Outer Ring Junction. And then out towards Clayworks today, yet again. Kiambu Road also, I think, about 4 lanes now. Inbound traffic quite hot and heavy, bumper to bumper as well on Limuru Road. Pockets of Parklands not too bad, likely to pick up though. Looking into that whole Muthaiga area and then coming out towards Gigiri, traffic there. Limuru Road, quite something today. Also, Jogo Road, that started early and is still continuing. Lunga out towards the Likoni interchange, going towards the Southern Bypass is picking up quite some, but the Southern Bypass is going to be all right for you getting out into the city. All right, North Airport Road already piling up. Imara Daima, that whole area, outbound traffic is quite something as well. Construction continues and so does the traffic. Let's take a look in about half an hour and see what it looks like. What's going on in your neck of the woods? Hope nothing too crazy. Let us know just in case and we'll spread the word. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Yes. Good morning. It's 7 after 7. My mic was off. 7 minutes after 7 on this 8th day of March 2022. Kenya's biggest conversation enters the second hour. Happy International Women's Day. We've got two ladies who've joined us in the studio. Before we introduce them, let us hear two proverbs from C.T. Muga.
Well, these proverbs are from Morocco. The first one, an honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. One. Second one, we decided to make it friendly for the day.
Yes.
To make it auspicious for the day. She who lacks knowledge derides her neighbor, but the woman of understanding holds her tongue.
She who lacks knowledge derides her neighbor.
Yes.
But a woman of understanding
holds her tongue.
Yes. And then the other one was about the truth?
Actually, it's an honest answer.
An honest answer.
Yeah.
An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips.
Yes. Now, take your pick. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it something that you look forward to? Is it something you'd rather run away from? Which is it?
It's an honest answer.
You know, they say the truth shall set you free.
Yeah.
Okay? But the bit they leave out, often it makes you miserable first.
Or even freedom could just lead you to be miserable.
Yes. You can seek for this wonderful ideology, and then it arrives at you and you start wondering whether you were in your right state of mind to want this in the first place.
Right.
Yes.
Let's introduce our two guests, ladies in the studio. Editha Ochieng is a youth and community leader, feminist and activist. She joins us in the studio alongside Dr. Agoy Lois Faith, who is a professional in human resource. Ladies, good morning and welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here. We are celebrating International Women's Day. The theme for this year's International Women's Day is breaking the bias, and we'll have therefore conversations surrounding breaking the bias and trying to understand what breaking the bias is all about and our own interpretations of breaking the bias. What biases are these that we're breaking? But let's get to understand and know you better. Dr. Agoy, you are an HR practitioner.
Yes.
Where do you practice?
I'm a human resource consultant. At the same time, I'm also a businesswoman, so I do relate with people a lot. I'm also a politician.
Huh?
Yes.
And so you also do relate with people a lot.
Yes, I do relate with people a lot, especially also matters concerning women. I have a lot of interest in that.
Okay.
Yes.
Last week we had a guest here and he introduced himself as a politician, and we asked him, what exactly do you mean when you say you're a politician?
When you say you're a politician, it means maybe you have an ambition to become one in different fields. You can be a politician as if you want to serve directly in parliament or any other level. Also, you can be a politician just as an advisor. You don't need to be maybe in parliament or any other position. You can serve as a politician by also supporting other politicians with ideas.
So it's being politically active.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Editor, what do you do? Youth and community leader, feminist, activist?
Most of the time I'm in the community, and I work from Kebera to global communities, and that is my office. So my work every single day is to empower women and young people. And when I talk about young people, I'm always specific about young women because they have different issues, and their issues are dynamic, and so many people don't relate with what they face every single day in the community. Again, I'm also a politician. As a feminist, I believe that we need to politicize everything because everything in this country, in the world, is political. So we need to talk about politics in grassroots community. I'm also a peace builder because we will never miss to talk about development. And when we speak about development, then we need peaceful community. Yeah.
There's always been a debate about the meaning of that word feminist. Who's a feminist?
A feminist is a woman who is challenging a status quo or any other person who feels like we want change in the community and they're doing something to change. Fighting retrogressive cultures every single day, like FGM, forced child marriage, and forced wife inheritance, talking about sexual and gender-based violence. And this is where I come from because personally I'm a survivor of sexual and gender-based violence. And feminist approach has really given me a space to amplify my voice and also fight for our dignity as women.
There's something I'd like to ask. Is it possible for a man to be a feminist?
Yeah, I've met men who are feminists, but personally, I believe that men can become allies of feminism because of the different issues that we face. And I will speak about sexual and reproductive health issues and going back to maternal health issues and menstruation health and management because most of the men don't experience that, but as women, we experience that. So when I talk about these issues, she'll relate with me, she's going to relate with me easily. Yeah.
So we're going to another International Women's Day 2022, and now we're talking about breaking the bias. And the thing is, okay, so there are many biases that, still are existent in our world today. Have we been able, or has the fight been adequately fought to the point whereby we can say we've done the groundwork, everything has been done, and we can now say start to break those ceilings, start to let those things come about? Or is there still more foundational work that needs to be done?
Indeed, a lot of things need to be done concerning the women, especially our rights as women in this country. We are still very much behind. When you look at how women are treated in leadership, they're not given the same space as men. And mostly when you look at women on higher profile, maybe those on higher profile leadership, most of the time they'll meet so many challenges and wars. And at the end of the time, you realize they'll get so much discrimination and their positions will be taken away. And not a woman will be replaced there, but a man will be replaced there. So we need something to be done about the biasness on women, especially in the high level profile leadership. And at the same time, even down there, you look at, for example, in the villages, when they want to give appointments, like, for example, of chiefs, administration, they'll always prefer a man to a woman, even when the woman has the qualification. So you realize the world has changed today. Women have better qualifications even, sometimes better than men. But they always will feel like men have a higher upper hand. And they'll always be biased on the women. And when you also look at most of the issues, like in the political field, a woman will vie on the same seat as a man, but the treatment will be quite different. When a woman goes to speak, the way some people treat her, they look at her more of a person who doesn't have moral ground. But a man will be given the dignity, honor of enjoying the political field. But when it comes to a woman, there'll be so much resistance, biasness, and then you realize at one point there'll be a lot of implications. Some women will end up even losing their marriages. And it becomes so difficult for a woman to be in leadership. So there'll be a lot of things that need to be addressed in this country to ensure that the women in this country can enjoy equal opportunities in leadership. Also in the political field, like us, we are going to have our election very soon. How are we giving the platform to our women to enjoy equal grounds as our men? Yes.
What needs to be done then to level that playing field, especially now for you, when you talk about women in leadership and political leadership, and you've basically implied that the playing field is not level.
No.
So what do we need to see done? What would you like to see done?
First of all, mostly I think the government needs to do a lot of or sponsor a lot of education to our people, especially the men, to understand that currently things have changed. And we need more women in leadership than previously, both locally and internationally. And if we do not support our women into leadership seats, we are going to lag behind as a country. If you look at the last parliament, there was a percentage of seats that was supposed to be given to women, which was not done up to now. So we cannot say that we are not being biased to the women.
But you say it's men. Why do you say it's men who need to be sensitized?
Most of the time, it is them holding on the seats. Like, what can you say about the last parliament when there was a percentage of women seats were supposed to be released? They were not.
But why isn't it that the population of Kenya elected
Yes.
more women? Why didn't we have more women vie for seats?
Because of the fear. A lot of violence on women, humiliation. There's so much hostility on women that makes them shy off from even the political field. And unless something is done, you cannot get so many women getting the confidence to go to the political field. Yes.
It sounds like we've talked about this for a very long time, right? I mean, it's been years on years of having this same conversation.
Yeah.
And the question always is, look, if women are presenting themselves for positions of leadership, then why is the population not choosing them?
Why can't
Why? Because if people go to vote, and we say that even if the playing field was made level, why are we not seeing that once a woman stands against a man put in a political competition, for example, that then they are not being selected in as wide numbers as they are presenting themselves?
I do feel, if you look back, the energy we put in girl child empowerment during sensitization, like stopping circumcision for women, there was a lot of training, a lot of resources put in to make sure that people could understand that that was a negative thing for the girl child and for a woman. Why can't they put in the same effort to train people, the richer place, and understand that this is not right? I feel that people have not been empowered with enough knowledge to understand that women need to be in power. Yes.
For me, this is a conversation that needs to continue every single day, not only in radio, but everywhere. Because we can also look at what is happening around the country, plus also going back to the Constitution 2010, whereby we have affirmative action and also we have matters of accelerating gender equality. But the reality is these things are not implemented in the local communities and even at national level of this country. Then there is a essence of just promoting all these issues and also empowering our community to understand the importance of female leadership. Where I come from, I'm looking at the cultures that has really bad women to get into this leadership position. But women like me, women like her, and maybe women like you are not taken in this society. We already discriminated because we are pushing for an agenda that will liberate women, agenda that will bring women to an equal position as men. And right now, when we speak about women empowerment, you'll even hear so many men say, what about the boy child? Women are still left behind. The gender disparity in this country and globally is really huge, and we need to speak about this conversation. I'm a mother, and I'm a feminist mother. So when I'm raising my children, I need them to understand there is a difference. And you need to be also unapologetically when you are pushing about these issues. Because personally, every single day when we are pushing about these issues, I face a lot of biasness, I face a lot of discrimination. Nimeitwa ule mde mbaya, ule mama mbaya, because working on a very hostile community in Kibera, whereby so many people are violent against women, I'll experience all this violence. And so many men will even profile me negatively because I want to see change. Like every day, cases are reported personally to me on my phone. Like jana nilipigwa na bwanangu, saini saa 5 ya usiku, sina pali naezenda kulala, ndiye aliniacha njaa siku 5, bwana hataki mimi niende kazi, nabaki nyumbani na watoto. So all such issues, it means that our communities are not empowered enough to understand women are supposed to be leaders, women are supposed to go to work, women can be in decision-making tables, women can push for peace in the community. So last year, during Paris on Generation Equality Forum, our president dedicated himself on matters of ending gender-based violence in 2026 and ending FGM in 2022. Where are we as a country? Do we have accountability? Who is in the system that is pushing for all these matters to end and we can reach sustainable development goal, especially goal number 5? Yeah.
You know, when you have these conversations with women, do you have forums where you also include men in the conversations? Because if men seem to be the main perpetrators, this is the first bit of my question. The second bit I'm going to ask. Don't you think men would also be better informed if they actually heard and listened and understood the things that you tell women and which they understand?
That is exactly true, and that's what I said. The effort we use to educate our men on stopping circumcision of women is the same thing we need to do by involving our men in this matter, to educate them and make them understand that women, when they're women in leadership and in the positions they serve, they're going to make things change in a bigger way. If we don't involve our men in the sensitization and talk about the issue of women and as women alone, there'll not be much impact on the ground. Because when you look at our community, the men are in charge, both in our culture. They are the frontliners, are the leaders in the communities. So for us to have change, we must first of all involve our men to accept the change and realize that it's time they should also try to talk to their communities to ensure that the women are treated on level. Of course, we cannot be 100% on equal ground, but they can give a women the opportunity to serve and see our country grow. You can see, like Tanzania, already we are having a woman as a leader, and soon we will have other countries follow suit. So we cannot also, as a country, Kenya, reach that level unless we accept.
Dr. Goy,
yes.
I'm going to have to challenge you on that one.
Yes.
Not because I don't think that women can be leaders right across this, let's say, East and Central Africa.
Yeah.
We have a female president in Ethiopia, just so that we understand. So women in leadership have been tested, tried, and have been found to be excellent leaders.
Yes.
But the second bit of my question is, there are those who are of the view that the biggest hindrance to the so-called emancipation of women are women themselves.
Do you know there are some women who are so much also drowned in their cultures? And the culture, they don't believe on fellow women leading. So many of our African cultures, we are trained to be under the men. So it's both the women and the men who need that education to understand that we need women in leadership, and things have changed. There are some cultures we will have to drop. And these some of the things that we cannot do alone and say we can do it only as women sensitization, but both men and women need the knowledge. Men are fathers to the girls, and also at the same time, the women are also mothers. So both these two must join forces to ensure we educate our community, our children, our relatives to understand that things have changed. We need the girl-child knowledge in the leadership of this country.
Editor, you work in the community, and in all this work that you do in the community, I just want to ask you the same question. Do you involve men equally as you involve women? And I'm saying equally because I get a sense that there are very many of the feminist organizations that focus their attention on addressing the men to understand and to accept, and assuming that the women have accepted. Do you engage the women?
We engage both men and women, but at the same time, I give my energy most of the time towards women, and this one is deliberate. Looking at the environment and the background that I came from, at even 30 years old, when you come to Kibera, women don't have self-esteem. So we need to make women to get that they need self-esteem, self-confidence, voice to speak on issues, a voice to get into activism to defend women's rights. So most of the time I'll work with the women, but at the same time I work also with men, because when I'm doing community matters like peace building, when I'm doing resilience issues, then I also need to bring men alongside. But all in all, our organization, our community-based organization, when we work in the community, I'll bring my brothers, I'll bring my siblings, I'll bring even my father and even my male relatives. This is something that we've spoken about. I'm here today because of my father. The small office that we have in Kibera, inside Kisumu village, was donated with my father, because my father saw our advocacy alongside. We used to work by the road. We used to do our meetings by the road. We used to push for our agendas by the road. And then my father donated that small office to us, and we're running our things. So yes, I also agree if we involve men. And believe me, my father used to follow these retrogressive cultures until now he saw that we need to make a difference. We need to get into a new step, and just supporting us. So yes, we need to involve men in all sectors.
A question here. You said that from your experience, very many young ladies in Kibera, in that community, don't have self-esteem.
Most.
Would you say the same of their mothers and their aunties?
Yeah, confidently. I would love to talk about myself because today is our day, and I'm part of this International Women's Day. My mother was a Standard 7 dropout, and my mother had 10 kids when she was already at 22 years old. And it tells you she didn't go to school. She was married at tender age, and she was not empowered. So when she was raising us, she raised us the same way she was raised. And at some point, she was even arguing with my father like, no, they are girls, they are going to get married. And my father was, no, I want to take all my children to school. And because we had that kind of a father who loved education and also who believed in us partially. So when we are not confident as women, you are going to raise your children the same way you are raised.
Your children?
Yeah.
Both boys and girls?
Both boys and girls.
Okay. So this is the point I'm driving at. That both boys and girls, children, are raised, mostly they spend a lot of their time, their formative years, with their mothers.
Yes.
And therefore the mothers are the main influencers of how they see society or how they see life.
Yeah.
So when we say that they get to a certain point and then the men are the ones who are, very patriarchal, they're the ones who are pushing against, they're the ones who are against empowerment, who influenced them that way?
And that's what I said. Most of our women were affected by their cultural background because they trained their children that mostly women are supposed to be submissively under men. So that's why the women need to be also sensitized, taught that things have also changed, and the same to men. So it's not a one way that we only concentrate on training also women alone or training also men. It's both people need the education to realize things have changed. In those days, women never used to go to school, or they used to get basic education, then get married. But right now, you realize girls have a lot of education, some of them even more than even the men. So the way things are right now, you cannot treat the situation right now as it was previously.
So is the bias being broken?
It isn't, because of there's still that generational gap. When you look at our parents, who still believe in our cultures, who still control the community, they need to be also talked to understand. They need to stop the way they used to think and accept that the world has changed. Things can no longer run the way they used to run previously. This is a new generation.
City.
Yes.
Please hold that thought.
Oh, it's that time, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
It is 7:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Happy International Women's Day to everybody who's tuned in this morning on SpiceFM and online on YouTube and Facebook, where we are live streaming the show. It's Breaking the Bias. That's the theme of this year's International Women's Day. That's a conversation that we are having in the studio. What do we mean when we say breaking the bias? Joining us is Dr. Agoy Lois Faith. She's a professional in HR. She's also a politician. She'll tell us where she wants to vie this year for any political seat. Editor Ochieng is a youth community leader, feminist, and activist. Also here with us in the studio. Time for us to take this quick break, take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
SpiceFM is taking you and 4 of your friends to the movies courtesy of everyone's favorite delicious fruit-flavored soda, Fanta and Anga Cinema. All you have to do to win movie tickets for your squad to an exclusive pre-screening of The Batman is to brush up on your Batman movie trivia and join me, Yolanda, and DJ Absolute on Sugar and Spice every weekday from 11 a.m. for your chance at a front row seat to witness cinema history.
I hope you don't believe that Hustler is a poor person. Hustler is a person who is making a living through hard work.
The group of leaders we are having now, Kenyans, listen, the chemical composition is the same. You will mold them to ODM, then NASA, you mold them to Kanu, mold them to Jubilee, mold them to any other different color sometimes, but the chemical composition is the same.
It's not about me as Nurdin Haji, but it's about the constitution that I swore to protect. So when individuals attempt to hoard those powers and they want to be investigators and also prosecutors, then of course I have to defend that position because that position is in the constitution and that's what Kenyans wanted.
I'll tell you what happens is that when you ignore court orders, you're creating and quoting anarchy. Then you create a very dangerous precedent.
A story is told of the first president of the country who also went to visit Madare, presidential tour. And of course, he went to this place and he introduced himself. So one of the invites says, kuna jina kama yangu.
Nairobi at 17, highs of 28 and lows of 16 at 13 degrees. Nakuru is sunny. Highs of 29 today. We'll see highs of 28 in Nyeri, where it's sunny at 14 and mostly sunny at 15 in Eldoret. Highs of 28 and lows of 12. In Mombasa, it's sunny at 27. 32 will be the high and lows of 26. Sun is also out in Malindi at 27. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 25. Sun shining in Kisumu as well at 21. Highs of 31 and lows of 19. While in Kakamega, we'll see highs of 32 and lows of 15. Clouds up in Kampala at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 19. All the sun is shining at 27 in Dar es Salaam. We'll see highs of 32 and lows of 26. 14 degrees and sunny in Johannesburg, highs of 25. We'll see highs of 33 in a mostly clear Lagos at 27. And Kinshasa's cloudy at 24. That'll be today's low, going to highs of 34.
Spice and everything nice. All right. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
All right, so getting into traffic hour right now is what it looks like where we are, a few minutes after 7:30, and Gong Road jam-packed going out towards Haile Selassie, and then we're looking at it coming in the other direction from Landis and Kamkunji off the very, very busy Jogo Road today. Looking at past the Nyayo Stadium roundabouts, we're looking at traffic and then builds on Huru Highway through and through into the CBD out towards Westlands, and there's a whole mess of traffic on the Thika Superhighway, and it goes really, really far, way beyond the Outer Ring Junction, and then we see some traffic coming all the way as far back as Githurai. Okay. Kiambu Road in and outbound, and now it's actually looking like in and outbound, but it's all inbound, and you have about 4 lanes now coming out beyond Coffee Gardens today, and also seeing Limuru Road doing that magic today, but no cars are disappearing. It's bumper to bumper action through and through. Westlands, Ring Road Westlands, really busy as well. Wayaki Way coming out. Remember, you can use the Red Hill Link Road to get out of the mess. That is this morning. We're trying to keep things moving today. Let us know what's happening where you are. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
Okay,
FM,
24
Nairobi.
minutes to 8. The conversation continues. Women's Day, breaking the bias. Our guests, Dr. Agoi Lois Faith and editor Rochieng. City.
What I was going to ask is, if you look at the way men and women relate in this day and age, I'll let the ladies speak for themselves, but even by my own experience, what I've observed is that women tend to be a lot more susceptible and willing to welcome change and the newness of things than men. So when you talk about modern times and modern men, the so-called modern man is not very different from their father or their grandfather. They just happen to live in a different time, but the way they go about their business, the way they think, any sense of modernity has to do with not just the practicability, but the usability of that particular moment. But the fundamental thinking is still very traditional. My thoughts. Ladies, what are your thoughts?
I do feel, though there's those that are still very rigid, who don't accept that women can be leaders, because that is our African culture. Women are not supposed to be in the leadership profile.
Now, leadership here, you're referring to political leadership.
Both.
Because are you saying that many men are not willing to let women be leaders in their own homes?
Are we saying that women are not leaders
in their own home?
Yeah, in the home. So when you put leadership in the home situation, the man in both African and the Christian culture, the man is the head of the house or the head of the home.
Okay,
but so we must differentiate two things. Yes. You cannot put leadership in marriage. Leadership cannot come in marriage.
Okay.
In the marriage consent, this is quite different. We are talking about leadership and marriage. Those are two different fields.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
But Ednah, what do you think?
For me, I just want to agree with you because I come from a very cultured community. And most of the time because of the cultures. And before I come to the cultures, I want to speak about capitalism system that has really affected our mental and how we think, and even how we act today. Long time ago, during colonization period, you'll find that what the white man brought, plus our cultures that we had, was so retrogressive to a black woman. And when the white man left, our men adopted the same cultures of making women to be slaves. And at some point, I want to agree with her. When we speak about marriage, it's so different with leadership. But also, I want to acknowledge men who are, because I've seen men like Barack Obama, I've been following different men, and I've saw the leadership and the support they've given their partners. But the reality is, most of the time with the African cultures, plus the ideology of capitalism, has made women to be slaves in the community, in marriage today. As much as you're working or you're not working, you need to do house chores, you need to do a lot. Exactly. And when your husband comes, you treat them like a king. But most of the men don't want to treat their wives as
the
queen.
Same way.
These are conversations that we need to speak about them. But at the same time, we have intergenerational gap. At the same way my father used to think is the same way, I want to agree with you at some point, my brother used to think. Because my brother was so, when he got married, he was so abusive until we chip in and said, no, you are not going to beat your wife. Sisi ndio tutakushika. Kwa sababu we are with you, you are seeing what we are advocating, we are ending gender-based violence, and you are a perpetrator within our home. And my father used to happen in previous years. It used to be like that. So all these practices that are retrogressive, my brother brought from my father. So when we are looking at intergenerational gap and the modern world, it is true women are adopting into change so faster and so quickly, and men have been resistant. Because even me and my partner sometimes we fight because of leadership. Ataniambia, hizo feminism yako usinilete kwa nyumba. You know, it feels so sad because now when you're speaking, like, unaongea kama nani? I'm the man in this house. I'm like, I don't want even to take your position. I agree you're a man.
But let
and
me
I'm
ask
a
you
woman.
this question. Eric put across a certain postulation and said, those early formative years children spend with their mothers. So these both boys and girls. So who do you think inculcates this idea? Let's talk about men for a moment. The idea that the man is the man in a traditional sense and that the woman is the woman in the traditional sense. Who is it who inculcates that idea?
I do feel we must also be very careful when sensitizing this issue of women. Because if women also get it very wrong, it can cause a lot of havoc to marriages also. Because that's why I say those are two things that must be separated. Marriage does not work through the field of learning through books and freedom fighting and whatever. Marriage is an agreement between two people. And normally how two people make it is not the same way.
Is it really?
Exactly.
But we are saying, we've said the opposite just a few minutes ago.
Yes,
we are saying that the same mindset that you have in your home is the same mindset that folks are now bringing out and applying to things like how
sometimes
you choose your leader.
why I'm saying this, you'll find one marriage, maybe the man is not a hyper, is a cool person. Another marriage you'll find the opposite. The man is a hyper. So you cannot treat the two situations in the same way. If you take the lessons from outside, normally the marriages won't work. Another thing, when we come to maybe sensitizing our women and girls and also the boys, actually it's right. The mothers has more time with the children in the house those days, not now.
Why?
Now you realize the mother works most of the time. She also arrives late in the house the same way the father does. So initially, it used to be the woman will have more time in the house because she never used to work. But right now...
But even now...
Yes.
When the two man and woman,
yes,
father and mother get home,
yes,
who is it that's giving more attention to the children?
Mother.
I can't say nowadays it's even mother. Most of the time, it is even there are times when men are supposed to be rushing home to oversee activities in the home because
are supposed to be.
Yes.
But what is the situation right now?
The situation right now, you realize there's so much controversy in working because two people leave the house to go and supplement the budget to the house. So this is an initiative that now has to be done with both parents, not even the woman alone. Because initially, those years, women used to have more time with their children. But currently, as we talk, you realize sometimes in some situation, women have even lesser time with their children.
The women in a traditional setting had more time because the activities were centered around the home.
Yes.
Yes. They rarely went out.
Yes.
So, and children grew up in the home.
Yes.
Even if they went to the farm, it was in the vicinity,
of
for example, of the home.
Of your home.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And in terms of leadership with women, even in that traditional setting, one could argue that many African traditional norms, the roles were definitive. You knew.
Yeah.
But within those roles, women were in charge.
Yes.
So there are things men never got involved with. No. That we do not get involved in.
Especially things like even touching poultry in the home. Men were not involved.
Okay, so I think if we're looking at this, and maybe we can jump in here, also. Look, what we are saying essentially is that this breaking the bias, these biases that we see on a regular, whether it is in the home, whether it is in positions of leadership, etc., it all has to do with a mental shift. It has to be behavior change. It's not going to be that you're going to take a mallet and go hit somebody over the head and say, change from tomorrow.
No.
It has to be a consistent change of the way in which we think, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But we're also saying at the same time that women who we are asking for these things to change, bringing up future generations, are the ones who are spending most times and unfortunately are compounding and compacting these biases because of the way you bring up boys, the way you bring up girls, you're still fitting them into this traditional role. So how can that change if women are contributing to the compaction of this same problem? How can it change, Edita?
So for me, from a local setup, I want to say a woman still spends a lot of time with their children, plus also working outside. Because if you come in Kibera, you'll find most of the time men are idle, especially the younger, under 30. Men are not working, but these young women are working, feeding their families. Men will be out, not taking care of the children, but kusimama tuko kwa barabara. But these young women are working, coming back home so late, and again, getting also, doing some house chores and also attending to their children. That is happening in the local community. So most of the time, the children will be raised by both parents, but most of the time the children will be raised by their mothers inside the home. That has a mother, father, and children. And children will adapt to whatever the mother is, taking them through, teaching them like that. And they will, this one will also impact to their behavior and their attitude, how they think. But at the same time, here we need to speak about culture. I want to speak about religion. Religion is one of the aspects that so many people fear to speak about. A woman goes to church. A church is already a setup. For example, a Catholic church, every priest is a man. So when they're discussing the agenda, they cannot discuss women agenda. They discuss men agenda because every priest is a man. When they're seated on a round table, what are they discussing apart from men agenda? When you go to mosque, and here we are speaking about we want to shift attitudes. How do we shift attitudes when men are still praying by themselves on Friday? When still men are still sitting on the table? This is religion. Kenya is a religious country. Women get some of these behavior, some of the attitude from the preaching. And you know, sometimes even the Bible plus the Quran has really given men, has made men to be so powerful than women. That is a reality. But now when you want to unpack religion, again, as an African black woman, you will be told, you don't touch there. Because the reality, somewhere, in that there is something that is missing in this space that as women, when we want to break the bias, we need to speak about, we need to unpack religion, we need to unpack culture. In my culture, men sits and decides. And when they decide, they bring a woman. And this woman will ensure that ile kitu wanaume wamesema huko juu, imepitishwa kwa generation. It was a main idea to kusema kwa Masailand hawatatengeneza manyumba. Nyinyi wanawake, you will go outside there, fetch for water, you will do poultry work, you're going to do a lot of work looking for cattle, and you'll come back home kutengeneza hii nyumba. You get? And these men, what they've done, they were really strategic, and the patriarchal culture is so established, rich, with wisdom, finances, and so much. So these men manipulate system in a way that you can never see it. And let me tell you, I agree also, we have women who are misogynists, women who don't understand there is need of supporting other women. Because in that space, wanapata zile keki kubwa kubwa. Mwanaume atakuja na keki kubwa, atakula quarter, akupee 3/4. Kama mwanamke, utampenda, unaona. Hautajua wakati anakumanipulate aje, ile agenda yake yenye alikuinstilia upitishe kwa mwanamke mwingine. So we need to unpack these things so well, because gender equality globally, it's not going to help women alone. It's going to help men and women plus our children and any other person who identifies differently. Because right now we're speaking about breaking the biases, but we're here speaking about women and men. What about that person who identifies differently? What about the intersex person? How do they think about breaking the bias? Where do we place them in all these matters of gender equality in our community today?
I strongly wish to maybe say something quite different, because we also need to embrace the change that where we have come from as an African country. And I strongly feel if you look at the part of religion, I think religion, they have tried to be a little bit more flexible in the way they were. If not, we will not even be having a Muslim as a president in Tanzania. We also need to appreciate where the bias has been let go at a point. Men have also left their pride. We also must congratulate them for that. If you go to also most churches right now in Kenya, you realize if there's so many pastors who are women, and there's so many followers there who are men. So what I strongly believe is us as a country, we should put in more effort in trying to educate our people to accept and realize that the times have changed. Situations also have changed. Women have also got education, have been empowered in different ways, and we give them an opportunity to serve at different levels. And this will begin by us parents in the house, by making sure that when we treat our children in the house, we treat them in an equal way. For them to understand, it begins from our home where we stay. Let them, the boys in the home realize their sisters also can get equal opportunities as them. Because if we don't do it from our home, it also becomes very difficult to try and doing it outside when they haven't seen their parents doing the same thing in their home.
Have you considered that probably the resistance is actually just inherent resistance? It's not necessarily resistance. It is just a continuation of what people believe is right.
Yeah.
And where I'm heading with this is when we talk about all these things, the rights and the gender rights, the gender conversation, the patriarchal cultural practices versus modern day practices, whose practices are we basically discussing? Are we discussing our own practices and saying let's identify those that are still working within this time and those that are not? Or are we trying to impose 100% somebody else's culture?
We cannot, as Africans, I believe we should not totally just drop our culture, because there's also a part of our sense of belonging. As African people, we have our culture that we also cannot drop.
But
we cannot drop our language.
My question to you,
yes,
Doc, is,
yes.
Are there, if you sit back,
yes,
is there a list of things that you see in your culture and say, this one's good, this one's need to go?
Exactly.
And not just practices, but entire culture, beliefs, everything.
Very true.
These ones are good, these ones need to go.
Exactly. I have. Because...
and is it universal? From the next woman in your culture, are you in agreement?
Or is this a solo mission?
And
not really.
The men also in your culture, is there some universality in terms of
very true, because
this is good, we need to retain it?
Their cultures as Africans, we cannot drop, and if we do drop, we will lose our identity as the African people. For example, we cannot just wake up also and decide we want to change everything and behave like the Western people. We are not Western. We are Africans. The food we eat, the way we treat our visitors, African culture, we are supposed to host our visitors in a friendly way. Our language, we cannot drop our language because we want to change everything.
Gender roles?
That's where we come. Gender roles, like men now have to realize those days they never used to work, but now they should be taught how to cook, how to clean. Because
there's a culture where men never used to
work. Why am I saying this? There's a culture where men don't touch anything. House.
Where? Okay, I'm saying in the home.
In the home, they don't wash. They don't cook. Now, when this young man comes to Nairobi here to get some work from the village, he's supposed to wash by himself and cook. So those are the cultures we need to stop.
You know, like what
they're not positive.
Do you know what you've just said?
Yes.
Young men who come from village to Nairobi get married quickly because they realize
exactly
they need someone to wash their clothes for them.
Those cultures, there are cultures now we must accept that they have been overtaken by time.
Have they really?
Yes.
That's really the question I was asking.
They have.
Have they?
Yes,
Are we trying to impose somebody else's culture on our cultures and they are clashing?
There are those ones that, for
example... This is a generational conversation.
So for me,
Daktari, I'm sure, even you,
yes.
editor, I'm sure the conversation that you're having today is a conversation that has been had beyond your generation.
Yeah.
And yet we are still stuck there. And that's why I said, maybe it is not a resistance.
Let me tell you, there was a time whereby you didn't need to come from your area to come and look for a job in Nairobi. As a man, you only needed to have your kettle. That was a sign of richness. the animals, and that was all. There was no education to make you maybe leave. Come to this studio here, and there were no serious things like this one that we are seeing right now. But right now, you must accept that this change, and this change is forcing us to drop some of our hard lines. Like the culture of men not cooking can now not continue. The culture of men not agreeing that women now have come out to be the same competitors on the same field. We compete for same jobs. We go for same interviews, same classes. That was not there previously. So that's why some of our hard lines on the cultures we used to have now have to drop, and people should agree that women and men at most of the things we do in life, we must agree that women cannot no longer be treated as a sideline. They must be treated in the same way men are being treated. Because we go to the same class, we go to the same school, we board the same matatu coming to jobs. We do all our things together. So we must accept that things have changed, situation and times have changed, and even religion has changed, and agree that women now can be preachers. That is the same way even people should agree that women must now take their position as leaders. The same way churches have agreed and allowed women to serve as pastors.
Ednah, what do you think?
For me, I'll say we have imposed cultures, and I'll go back to religion. It's a very difficult topic, and religion has controlled Africans, how we think, how we behave. Because yes, we want to retain some of our cultures, but again, we need to sit down as African community and learn from the previous experiences, pushing it forward to progressive cultures. For me right now, when I sit in different meetings and in my community, I would just advocate for progressive cultures. Depends with where an individual comes from, because we have different cultures. And yes, African was united according to the history until colonization period, during all these processes. And now we started also acting as Western, even how we talk, even the English that we use. So again, we have a lot of things because we adopted even the clothes. Because if you're speaking about retaining our cultures, hizi hazikuwa nguo zetu, si ni kweli? Na sasa pia tunataka kuslay. So we have a lot of discussion to speak about, so that at least we can fit in. Because right now, we are not even fitting in. We are not, we are trying our best, but we are not, because we've forgotten a lot of things. And if there is something that we need to speak about today, we need to speak about resources, because there is that culture that we have scarcity of resources in Africa that is intentional, it is deliberate. That's why Africans, we are poor, and most of the time, tuko kwa war. Because when people are taking our minerals away from us, when people are taking our resources from us, and we don't have anything for ourselves, then also they're imposing so much to us. They are imposing things like war. Because when you don't have resources, kama uko Kibira, tunanga maji, maji ni expensive. Kuja asubuhi kwa line ya maji, women are fighting. Because if I don't fetch that water, then I cannot sustain my family, because water
It affects the rest of your day.
Exactly.
Editor, thank you very much for joining us. Editor Ocheng is a youth community leader, feminist, and activist. And she's been with us alongside Dr. Agoy Lois Faith, a HR professional. Dr. Faith, now you can tell us, you want to vie for political seat this year?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what seat?
I'm an aspirant for Women Rep Kakamega County.
Right.
Yes.
Is it the first time that you're throwing your hat in the ring?
Yes.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
And congratulations for taking that step.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us again. Happy Women's Day. And as you continue having these conversations on breaking the barrier and just breaking the bias, pushing these conversations on all, let's not fear. Let's not step back. Let's express ourselves. Because, only in talking are we able to discuss these matters, are we able to arrive at some common ground, or even just move the needle. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. In the next hour, we continue with this. This time, we're looking at still Women's Day, but we'll be talking about women refugees. What's the plight of women refugees? Where are they? What are they going through? What do they need? We'll be joined by Jamin Kaswania. He's a rebuilding advocacy manager at the International Rescue Committee, and Samuel Orlando, the executive director of Pamoja Trust. Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, broadcasting from right here in Nairobi to around the country. Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri and Malindi, and to the world on SpiceFM KE, YouTube and Facebook. It's 8 a.m.
spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is Nita Dennis Aseto. The KCPE exams enter the second day today. This morning, the candidates will write their science exam before taking Kiswahili and then the Kiswahili Insha. On the final day tomorrow, they will sit for the social studies and religious education. Newswire continues to wish all the candidates the very best as they sit their exams. Nairobi primary school head teacher has been arrested for barring a student to sit his Kenya Certificate of Primary Education exams. John Mashadi Mwangi, according to police report, was arrested for violating the 13-year-old right to education. In the incident, the student who resides within the Mwea West sub-county reported to school but was barred from accessing his class due to the balance of the outstanding fee. The report further indicates that action was only taken after reports of the incident to reach the sub-county director of education who allowed the boy to sit his exams. The matter was then reported to the police and necessary action was taken against the teacher. DCI Mwea has since taken over the investigations. Now 40 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examination candidates from Sinoni and Kisela primary schools in Malindi County have been traced following banditry attacks that left at least 4 people killed and scores injured. Rift Valley Regional Commissioner Ali Mohammed said the candidates who had fled their homes after the skirmishes sat the examinations at Muchongoi Primary School, where they will be provided with meals and boarding facilities. The Regional Commissioner assured schools of security and prompt action to ensure that exam materials reach examination centers on time. And the Ministry of Interior is now seeking the support of the National Lands Commission to recover prison services land lost to land grabbers in Yatta, Eldoret and Kapsabet. Speaking during a visit to the Prison Staff Training College in Ruiru, Kiambu County, Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i said Kenya Prison Services has lost huge chunks of land to rogue government officials. The CS further stated that the government is undertaking aggressive titling of prisons land to secure it from grabbers. And nearly 3,000 clinical officers, interns attached to health facilities across the country have protested the non-payment of their promised monthly stipends. The trainees were engaged by the national government through the Ministry of Health for a 1-year internship program at public hospitals in 2 cohorts. The government engaged the first lot of interns in August and the second lot in December for a period of 1 year. According to the letter, the interns are entitled to a monthly stipend and would be subject to the rules and regulations in the Kenya Civil Service. Now 32 persons involved in the side event that saw a female motorist accosted and sexually assaulted will be arraigned in court today. Police spokesperson Bunu Shoso says the 12 motorcyclists have been impounded. Kenyans online have continued to express their anger and disgust with the incident they say have become one too many. They're now calling upon the government through the relevant ministries to deal with the issue and ensure that justice is served, normalcy on the roads restored and the law is respected. Russian forces bombarded cities in northern and southern Ukraine as Ukrainian officials warned Russia may be moving closer to storming Kyiv, and Russia's military announced the latest in yet unfulfilled plans to establish humanitarian corridors for civilians caught amidst its invasion. Ukraine's General Staff of the Armed Forces said Russian forces were focused on encircling Kyiv, Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy and Mykolaiv. A statement accused Russia of violating international humanitarian law by shelling civilians and of creating a humanitarian crisis in occupied areas. A Russian Defense Ministry statement said that for humanitarian purposes, Russian forces will declare a regime of silence to open corridors for people to leave Kyiv, Kharkiv, Sumy and Mariupol. Those who leave Kyiv will be airlifted to Russia, and that the move was in response to a direct request from French President Emmanuel Macron to Russian President Vladimir Putin. And Scotland and Ukraine's World Cup playoff semi-final has been postponed. The nations were set to meet at Hampden on the 24th of March, but Ukraine requested FIFA push back the tie following Russia's invasion of the country. As a result, the playoff final for the winners against either Wales or Austria on 29th of March will now also be delayed. Discussions are underway for a new date, with the Nations League window in June the most likely option. The World Cup finals take place from 21st November to 18th December. Today is International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to all the women out there. Good morning.
102.5 Spice FM.
We are in the middle of
Kisumu.
traffic hour and we see it building up on Uhuru Highway quite some. We've seen it on Gong Road earlier. Also some action on Mombasa Road. Most parts of the city, everybody is really looking jam-packed here. Thika Superhighway, really hot and heavy. Kiambu Road, many lanes of traffic today coming out of Westlands. Okay, so here we are offering solutions. Red Hill Link Road, getting out of Westlands, the drama that is. Use that to go the long way if you're going into the city. Or other parts, much better, and you don't have to stick in the madness that is Westlands, at least for this morning. Outer Ring also building up Manyanja Road, then going out towards Lunga. You find some traffic there, and onto Likoni at the interchange. The Southern Bypass, however, is looking pretty good, and you can use that as an option to get into the city. Longer, but you will not be stuck in traffic. How about we take a look about what it looks like in a short while and talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
7 minutes after 8, Kenya's biggest conversation on the 8th day of March 2022. We're here live on SpiceFM. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. And for the next 1 hour, we are also live on KTN Home. A very good morning. Happy Women's Day to our audience joining us from around the world. CT Muga has 2 proverbs because it's Women's Day.
Right. An honest answer. The proverbs are from Morocco. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. Now, determine whether it is a good thing or a bad thing. Something you should embrace or something you should flee from. Okay? Second proverb. She who lacks knowledge derides her neighbor, but the woman of understanding holds her tongue.
She who lacks knowledge derides her neighbor, but a woman of understanding holds her tongue. Mzuri sana. We have another guest in the studio, and this time we're having a conversation around women refugees as we continue commemorating International Women's Day. Our guest is Jamin Kuswania. He's a rebuilding advocacy manager at International Rescue Committee. Good morning, Jamin.
Good morning.
It's good to have you on the show. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation and the hot seat.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here, especially when you have this conversation on the International Women's Day. And a key focus on women refugees and the elements of inclusion as we commemorate the International Women's Day. We will acknowledge that we have many disparities that continue to arise even after we have made large milestones towards gender equality.
Great. We are also supposed to have another guest in the studio with us, Samuel Orlando. He's the Executive Director of Pamoja Trust. Unfortunately, he's been taken ill, but he was hoping to join us via Zoom. We'll see if we'll be able to connect with him. But tell us, Jamin, what is the International Rescue Committee?
The International Rescue Committee is a non-governmental organization that has been existing since 1933, dealing with persons who have been displaced by conflicts, with the floods, with the biggest focus on refugees, IDPs, and persons victims of human trafficking. In Kenya, we have been around since 1992. Our biggest focus has been dealing with refugees in both Kakuma and the Dadaab refugee camp, but also the focus in urban area where we certainly do livelihood programs and a rebuild program currently that we are conducting. We also support host communities because we realize that refugees exist within communities where we have Kenyans, and many times they face the same difficulties. And so our programming looks at both the refugees and the host communities in the areas where refugees are certainly resident. In Nairobi, we are having a livelihood program that is focused on both the Kenyans and refugees, called the Rebuild Program, but a deliberate focus on women, so that we can be able to uplift their way of living, targeting both the skills acquisition, access to apprenticeship, access to certification, and also access to grants and capital for these particular refugees, so that they can be able to be self-reliant.
There are very many organizations in country that handle refugees at one point, from one point to another. Talking about just international refugees, let's not even talk about internally displaced, right? Let's just talk about people who are coming into the country from across the borders.
Yes.
How do they get here, and how many agencies or institutions deal with them?
We have very many agencies that actually deal with refugees. And currently we have approximately 529,000 refugees in the country. About 40% of those in Kakuma, 44% in Dadaab, and about 16% living in urban areas. And so refugees will come into the country via different means. Majority of those that we have in the country, they just cross over the border. They have come from Somalia, where we have more than 200,000 refugees currently in Kenya. They have come from South Sudan, where we're also talking about almost 200,000. They have come from Ethiopia. We have refugees from Burundi. We have refugees from Uganda. We have refugees from Eritrea. And so a majority of these actually just cross the border when the situations in their country are untenable for their safety and for their own survival. And so Kenya as a country is a party to the International Convention on Refugee Protection. And so hosts refugee and has been hosting refugees since the 1980s, but specifically in a more formalized way since 1991, 1992, when we had the biggest refugee crisis, especially coming from Somalia with the host of Mohamed Said Barre. But then having a formalized legal document, what we call the Refugee Act, in the year 2006. But we are happy that now we are speaking about a new Refugee Act, the Refugee Act of 2021.
When you talk about the refugees who are in our camps, the word camp, like say for instance, we talk about Dadaab, it's not just one big camp. There are other smaller camps that are associated with Dadaab.
Yes.
Now, the communities you mentioned, these are our neighbors. You're talking about Somalia, talking about Ethiopia, talking about Southern Sudan. These are our neighbors, Uganda.
True.
Do we have refugees who come from other parts of Africa in these refugee camps?
The majority, the bulk of the refugees that we have actually just come from within our neighbors. But then we have had refugees who have come from Turkey. We have refugees who have been in the country who have come from Yemen. And the reason is that in the pursuit for safety, refugees have the leeway to choose where do they actually feel safe from. But secondly, is that there are people who would come into this particular country not to seek asylum, but when they arrive in the country, the situation in their home area is worse off. And so they are not able to go back to their home areas. Those persons can be able to seek asylum. And I'll give an example right now. We have Ukraine and what's happening, and you have heard that we have some Ukraine tourists who are around and they don't want to go back to their home area. So they have that particular opportunity under international law to seek asylum in this country because the situations from their place of origin is worse off, though they didn't come into the country in the very first place to actually seek asylum.
So what are we signatories to that enables us to be able to follow the dictates and the acts that have to relate to refugees? What international convention did we sign into?
Yes. I think the refugee, the access to asylum is what we call in international law jus cogens. That it has...
Who again?
Jus cogens. That it has taken...
Please spell it.
JUSCOGENS, which simply means...
Is that Latin?
Yes, it is.
Okay, carry on.
That they are practices that have taken over a long period of time that we have accepted them to be our way of life. And so in I think the Declaration on Human Rights of 1948 talks about the right to asylum. and that person shall have right to asylum. But then even then, in 1948, we didn't have proper mechanisms in terms of who is this who actually qualifies to access asylum. But in 1951, we have the International Convention on the UN Convention on Refugees, and we have the 1967 Optional Protocol of 1967. And so Kenya has been party to these two, the convention and the protocol, but also the 1989 OAU Convention on Refugees that we are party to, that then allows us to be able to reciprocate what other countries will also be able to do in terms of receiving refugees. But also we have domesticated this in the Refugee Act of 2006, but then now with the Refugee Act of 2021, where we set the criteria in terms of who qualifies to be a refugee, what are the institutions that are going to manage refugees, what are the rights of refugees even as they come into this particular country.
Okay, so with over 500,000 refugees in the country,
yes,
and even as we're talking about gender equality as something that we are striving to, it would be interesting to see or to note the ways in which gender inequality plays out within the refugee status. And so could you give us pointers as to how that works? Because in the imagination, it would be that, look, these are folks who are looking for asylum. You wouldn't see some of these issues playing out, or that would be the assumption that you wouldn't necessarily see. But then have we seen these inequalities play out, and how do they play out within the refugee situation?
I think gender inequality in the wildest sense, as it affects, I think many times we have societies where we have one thing or the other that will affect one society and another. But then you realize that gender inequality affects us as a globe. The question would be how it manifests from one particular society then to another. The refugee space has been disadvantaged for a period of time, because then in terms of equality, we are looking at social, economic, political. Refugees have not been included, for instance, living in this country, some for the last 30 years, some born here. They've not been included in social or even economic aspects that they will be able to survive. Women specifically, people will run away from their home country. They do not have skills. And so when they come into this particular country, if they do not have the option, for instance, of moving towards the tertiary level, then their skills, they actually shut off from accessing work and other opportunities that will come with it. Our institutions, over these particular years, we have not economically included refugees either in county services or either in national services. Social protection funds that we have in this particular country, they do not include refugees. So whether they are women social protection funds, then the women refugees have actually then been left out of this. And so even before, and this many times happens, that people would look at gender equality as more of representation. And therefore, they'll be asking how many political leaders. But then the discussion needs never end there. Because we have millions of women who will never aspire even to vie for any particular seat, even if they were given the chance to. And so we need to ask ourselves that what is it that the majority of other women face that discriminate them from accessing their full potential, whether it is access to skills, whether it's access to credit and capital, whether it's access to governance. How do they participate in decision making in the counties and the national level? Refugees have been excluded from participating either at the governance level in the areas where they reside and even at the national level in terms of the access to services.
That brings an issue that's still running in my mind, which is the rights that one has when they become a refugee. But let me start from that other point.
Yes.
What is the process of identification and recognition of a person as a refugee?
Yes.
What do they need to go through? I mean, someone has crossed the border. Okay. So at what point do we, in our government records, say that so-and-so is a refugee in this country?
Thank you. The responsibility of managing refugees is the responsibility of government. And government, under the Ministry of Interior, has a department called the Department of Refugee Services. The Department of Refugee Services is given the mandate of managing refugees and providing documentations to refugees. So when someone walks into the country, they are supposed to notify their intention to seek asylum to the Commissioner of the Department of Refugee Services. Once then that has been notified, then they are given appointment for them to undergo a particular interview. And why? It's because for one to become a refugee, they need to qualify. Our international convention and even our national law spells out a refugee as a person who has run away from their country of origin because of reasons of either war, discrimination in terms of religion, discrimination in terms of race, in terms of political or even a social opinion. And so the interview process, what we call the refugee status determination, is to actually check that the reasons that you have run away from your home area are actually this, and that you are not running away from prosecution in your country, but you are actually running away from persecution from the country where you are running from. If persons qualify, then they will be recognized as refugees and they cease being asylum seekers. If they do not qualify, then they are denied that particular process and then they are required by law to go back to where they actually came from. The cornerstone of refugee protection is what we call the non-refoulement, that we cannot send someone back home when the situation that they have run away from is actually still there. And so it is based on this that the refugee status determination has actually to ascertain that these particular people ran away from their home area because of these particular issues.
And then, just sorry, City, I just want to follow up on that. So the person who has crossed the border has the responsibility to seek the commissioner and apply for asylum.
Yes.
But this person is already so lost. I mean, they're entering a new country. Is there like a border point that says this is where you seek asylum from? What's the responsibility of the commissioner to make themselves accessible to this person?
Yeah, I think you point a good issue. One, majority of refugees who will come in this particular country will not even move through the designated entry points as we know them to be. Because one, they do not know them, but even if they knew them and they were running en masse, then it will be list of their concerns, which is the legal border for entry and which one is not the legal border for entry. And so the law allows that they are to notify themselves to the government office that is nearest to them. And so from that government office, then they will be referred to the Department of Refugee Services. The Refugee Act of 2021 now asks the commissioner to ensure that at where we have designated entry points, at least we have officers from his office who are found in those particular areas. And where they are not, then the immigration officers then help in that particular referral to his office.
Okay, now that brings me now to that question.
Yes.
So once this person has been identified as a refugee and documented as a refugee, what rights do they have?
The refugee rights are similar to rights that Kenyan citizens enjoy, only to a small extent the political rights in terms of participation in vote. And why do I say so? That the Bill of Rights speaks about the rights of people. And when you look at the Bill of Rights, it's not speaking, and I think it's only Article 35 within that broad that will be speaking about the right of a citizen to access information and that. And so all these particular rights, which are actually human rights, they are rights that refugees are actually entitled to be able to achieve. Then, over the years, it's what about the right to work? What about the rights to services? And that indeed, our Refugee Act of 2021 now makes it plainly clear because it wasn't that way. And therefore, they operated like it was a gift or a token that was supposed to be given. The Refugee Act of 2021 speaks about their right to work, practice their own profession, because we have many refugees who come from their own countries. They were either doctors, some of them were even engineers, but then they end up living within the refugee camps without independent, without the ability to exploit their full potential. Where they qualify, then they can be able to practice those particular professions within the country. It speaks about their rights to be included even in the county integrated development plans, because yes, if they live within Nairobi, then they will need to also participate within the planning process of the city. It speaks about their rights to documentation, because then document becomes a key element for them to be able to access services at the national or even at the county level. We have had refugees not able, for instance, who want to operate border and even operate taxis, not able to access driving licenses, so they have to depend on handouts. We have them.
Is there a process within the realms of this of the refugee world where they can acquire some of these rights to actually participate in the normal lives of the people in the country in which they're refugees?
Yes, because the inclusion aspect, programming for refugees for a long period of time excluded refugees as a small entity away from the rest of the Kenyans. But then progressively, there is what we call the sharing of resources and inclusive of both refugees and even the host communities. And therefore, our act speaks about the rights to ensure that we have actual inclusion of refugees. We have refugees enabled to access work. We have refugees enabled to be included in development plans. We have refugees enabled to participate in affairs of their own governance, because then they exist within the community and the societies where we are.
So that also goes into that area that you had mentioned earlier, right to social protection.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the Inua Jamii funds, when you talk about free maternity, the refugees are also included by law. When you talk about LFCTA, the refugees are also in that list of the people to benefit from LFCTA.
Or is it an aspirational thought, something that they ought to be included in?
The law provides that they ought to be included. But then the process, the practice is that we have not reached that particular level where refugees have been included.
Why?
And so I think it's an element of a lot of lobbying from our end for inclusion. The Refugee Act of 2021, signed in November, provides at least that particular leeway that we are now going to be moving towards more inclusion at county, more inclusion at national, more inclusion at on the social protection funds and those particular aspects. And this is the reason that the issues that will affect refugees, the issues that will affect refugee women, are similarly issues that will affect every woman. And so the only way then to move, and especially having had protracted refugee situation in this country, for instance, for the last 30 years, we have refugees who have been born here, they are 30 years old. Chances are that they may not even go back to their home area. They don't know even where actually they came from. And so it's only better if we are going to be able to include them within our systems in the country, for them to be able to depend on themselves. Refugees being dependent on aid, and over the years, what we have seen is that aid has actually been decreasing as we're having an increase in the number of refugees in other particular countries. And therefore, the only proper way to do is empower refugees to be self-reliant, to be able to support themselves and their family, instead of relying on donor aid year in, year out, which also robs them of their dignity by the end of the day.
We said that we'll be joined by Samuel Orlando, who's the Executive Director of the Pamoja Trust. He joins us now via video link. Samuel, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Thank you very much for joining us, even though it's via video link. We want to take a break, and then we come in. We will introduce you properly. You'll tell us about Pamoja Trust and the work that you're also doing in highlighting the plight of women, especially women refugees. Good job already being done by the International Rescue Committee, as Jamin has been telling us. Let's take this break. It's 29 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We are live on KTN Home, on SpiceFM, and we're also live on YouTube and Facebook. The conversation we're having this time is surrounding Women Day, and it's the plight of refugees. What do we need to know about women refugees, whether they're living in camps or they're living within communities? Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Every woman should celebrate her uniqueness. This Women's Week, we celebrate the women that came before us, that taught us how to navigate in this world, that continue to show us that there's strength in support and community. Give thanks to the women in your lives.
Remember asking both my mom and dad.
Most important woman in my life is my mom,
my female workmates, my mom, my grandmother, my sisters,
my
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Dare for fast relief from pounding, throbbing headache? Take Cipladon. The fizz works to relieve pain faster.
Available at all good pharmacies and now at Chandarana supermarkets. If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
Nairobi, highs of 28 and lows of 16 today. Sunny conditions at 17 in Nakuru, highs of 29 and lows of 13. We'll see 12 as a low in Nyeri, where it's sunny at 16. And we'll see highs of 28 in Eldoret, sunny at 17 currently. Looking at partly sunny conditions in Mombasa, highs of 32 and lows of 26. And we'll see highs of 31 and lows of 25 in a sunny Malindi. Kisumu sunny this morning at 23, highs of 31 and lows of 19. While we see lows of 15 in Kakamega, it's currently 24. We'll go to highs of 32. Kampala's cloudy at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 19. While it's shining in Dar es Salaam at 27, highs of 32 and lows of 26. Johannesburg is sunny at 18, highs of 25 and lows of 15. While we're looking at mostly clear conditions in Lagos at 27, we'll go to highs of 33. 34 will be the high in a sunny Kinshasa at 24. That'll be today's low.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, so we're looking at heavy traffic on Raila Odinga Way today. This is coming off of Langata Road, where there's quite some today, all the way far back as Hul Gardens this morning and moving along very, very slowly. There's the option of using the southern bypass and going the long route into the city. Think about it. You won't be stuck in this jam and jam. Gong Road also continues with some, and we're looking at Valley Road going into the city with bumper-to-bumper traffic. Coming off Thika Super Highway, we're going to see Juja Road with some traffic as well. We're going to see Thika Super Highway coming in through to the Pangani Underpass, which then feeds on to Maranga Road. Kiambu Road is a nightmare. Hopefully you wake up from that in a short while. But for right now, it's absolutely crazy. Looking at the same thing on Limuru Road today, which had started really early and still continues. How about we keep it sane, folks, and keep things moving this morning? Talk to us where it gets sticky on SpiceFM, KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
It is
Spice
26
FM.
minutes to 9. The conversation continues with Jamin Kuswania, Rebuilding Advocacy Manager at International Rescue Committee. Samuel Orlando, Executive Director of Pamoja Trust. And of course, we are in the Situation Room. Eric Latiff, CT Muga, Ndu Okoh. So just before we took the break, we were introducing Samuel Orlando to the conversation. We've been talking about the plight of women refugees who are in the country. And Jamin has told us, well, the rights that the refugees have, the challenges that the women refugees are facing. And that's a continuation of the conversation. Tell us about Pamoja Trust, though, Samuel.
Good morning, Latiff. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join you. I had a bad cold, and I feared for you guys at the studio.
You did well to fear.
Exactly. So I want to join my colleague Jamin, whom we were collaborating with in the program around urban refugees. And as an organization, we focus quite a lot on Article 43, particularly right to basic, right to housing, right to health, right to water and sanitation, and right to social protection, a conversation that we did have with Jamin a few moments ago. And as we mark the International Women's Day, it's so important to situate this within the planning documents that you did allude to earlier, particularly when you speak about inclusion and integration of refugees. And the question that we begin asking ourselves is that after you recognize and give the refugees a status, then they have got the right to participate in elements that include and integrate them within the communities that they live in. And that brings us to the planning documents within the devolved system of governance. And as you can see, majority of the devolved functions actually oscillate around Article 43. Be it right to water, be it right to health up to level 4, be it right to basic education and child education, be it elements of perhaps social protection, and be it also elements of right to housing. So then what is the place of urban refugees, particularly women whom we are celebrating their day to day, in being part and parcel of planning and government allocation of resources at that local level? So that's what as an organization we are doing, engaging with communities, but also engaging with the county government to ensure that the voice and space of urban refugees is created and they participate in co-creation of the communities.
Samuel, how many women refugees are you dealing with currently who are urban refugees?
I cannot say that often because we are speaking about integration, and integration, they come as a part and parcel of the communities that we engage with. So that when we engage with the Kibra community, then from an integration perspective, the women refugees that are part and parcel of this community are integrated within the residents associations, they are integrated within community-based associations, they are integrated within market committees, so that then they are part and parcel of these management structures of the devolved system of governance within the community level.
Are you saying it's a deliberate move not to basically identify them and say, now these are refugees? In terms of your programming?
In terms of programming internally, yes, to monitor and to identify the indicators and the progress they are making, we do that. But in terms of debate, it may not be great to separate them because that will negate the conversation around inclusion and integration. Because in inclusion and integration, we are arguing that they are part and parcel of the community. So then when we start setting them aside, then we will say, okay, fine, is there preferential treatment that they need because of the form of multiple discrimination that they may face? So then they come as part and parcel of the communities and, contribute to the imagining of the communities and the integration of communities and planning of the communities that they come from.
Right. So what we're looking at now is it's clear that there's a problem. There are issues here. Then when it comes to realizing their rights and then doing something about it. But it's interesting because you both said recognition of the lack is also an issue. Is there even a recognition of some of these rights then that these women in the refugee status would have? So from where I am, in order for you to do something, there needs to be a recognition of the problem in the first place as your basis, or establishing and saying, okay, first of all, folks, there's an abrogation of rights here. Whether they're refugees or not, there's a problem. Has there been adequate, whether it's from the groups who are working in community with them, the host nations, the nations that host them, is there adequate recognition then towards solution finding for them?
We have certainly recognized what challenges that refugees and more particularly refugee women actually face in this particular country. And they are in various forms. One is that in terms of access to labor market, that has been denied of them for a long period of time. And so this would be either because they lack skill, either because they don't have access to work permit and therefore they cannot be able to participate in the formal economy as we know it to be at the moment. Mm-hmm. The second aspect has been exclusion from access to both county and national services. So access, even accessing a business permit in Nairobi County for a refugee is not possible because they have moved them to electronic to be done online, and therefore the refugee documentation for document has not been customized for that. The second bit has been in terms of access to credit and even financial inclusion. Refugees, for many years, they have not been able to even open a bank or even an M-Pesa account. And which ordinarily, if we deny them services where we will say that we will require a huge investment, this is just a platform for them to be financially included, them having an M-Pesa, then having a particular bank account. And that has been denied out of them. The other aspect is in terms of participation in governance and planning. Because if they do not participate in governance and planning, then you do not plan for them. And so, the earlier conversation, that the exclusion in terms of access to services has a huge contribution because they were excluded from the very beginning at the planning process, at the governance process. And therefore, their voices and participation has not been accorded a key platform within the governance structures that we have in this particular country.
Let me ask the question, where in the world do we have refugees enjoying some of these rights and privileges that you speak of?
I would say the biggest number of refugees across the globe, apart from a few countries in Africa, actually access these particular rights, especially some rights that for me and you would look basic. Why, for instance, would you deny a refugee to open an M-Pesa account where they will be putting their money and transacting? Where would you deny a refugee to have a bank account where they'll be depositing their money if they do business and that? When you look at the contribution that refugees could be able to offer to a particular country, then we will begin to ask the question, why the exclusion? A refugee today who would want to work and even pay taxes in this particular country, they're not able to do so. We have majority who work in the informal sector, but they do not pay taxes. Why? Because our system as it is, they can't be able to access a KRA PIN. And so, when we look at the skills that they come with in the country, is that refugees have come in this country not to work. They were not looking for green pastures. They were looking for survival. And therefore, their access to skills means that once they go back to their home area, when they go, is that they have skills that could go to build up their home country. And therefore, it lessens the disruptive aspect that we experience from countries where they originate from, if they have skills that they could go out and build their own country. And even them being able to support their children and their families within the country. Because if we do not therefore then do so, it will mean they have to be dependent. The day international help then declines, it means then the country has to bear the burden of taking care of refugees and feeding and sustaining
But
them.
it's strange you should say this because Kakuma was founded in 1991 and Dadaab in 1992.
Yes.
But we've had refugees come into this country long before these camps were set up. And refugees, if my memory serves me right, served or rather enjoyed these very privileges you're saying they don't have. They worked. They just carried on their lives as normal. For instance, during the reign of Idi Amin in Uganda, okay, there were very many Ugandan citizens who were in Kenya. They were working. They were known to be Ugandans. They're not Kenyans, but they were working. Many of them later got assimilated, stayed in Kenya. The same happened with Rwanda. The same happened with Southern Sudan. The same happened with Somalia. Now, if this has happened before, what is this new thing that now suddenly seems to be taking us back from where we were before? Is it the large numbers who suddenly came in because the countries were even more unstable? What happened?
I think that's a good observation. And majority of us would admit that in the 70s and the 80s, even a majority of the teachers who taught within our schools, some of them came from Ugandan.
Very many.
And so when we began having, and we didn't have camps even then.
There were no camps.
So once we had a huge number of refugees coming into the country, I think the gains and the rights that they actually had were in a way, I would say, taken away from them. And so because of the big number that we were now having, then their rights were actually abrogated. And so, and you will know that even on those particular times, we didn't even have a refugee act that would enable them. The management of refugees happened from the office of the vice president. It was Home Affairs then.
It was.
And so they were then given documentation and assimilated and allowed to work and operate within every part of the country. With the 1991 and 1992, many refugees coming to the country, those particular rights then were again taken away from them. And therefore, we began from the very beginning.
Can I say something, Jamie?
Yes.
We commercialized refugees.
We commercialize refugees. It depends. It depends from what
those
particular
camps
quarter.
were beneficial to various actors when they were camps. And when they had people staying in a concentrated area called a refugee camp.
I would not deny that particular element. in terms of what would be the benefit of having a refugee camp. But when you look at the plight of the people, the refugees themselves, then, and I'll give an example. You have refugees born in the Dab refugee camp who have never left that particular camp. They have gone to primary school and to high school, no tertiary education. And so it becomes difficult for you to even be able to encourage refugees to access education in the camps where it is free, because they have seen persons who have gone until finished high school, but they have no hope. They have not been able to do anything on their own. They have depended on aid all the years long. And therefore, a time to change that particular way, that we broaden their rights in terms of their right to movement, their right to access work, their right to be able to access skills, and including tertiary skills, their right for even involvement in the development of the country. And even as we pursue durable solutions toward refugees, actually three of them. And one is resettlement, where some of them, actually a very small fraction, actually resettled to Western countries. But then the second is actually voluntary repatriation and refugees going back to their home area. And this is dependent on how is the situation in their home country, because it has to be voluntary. And the third aspect is actually integration. And integration in the country where they actually sought refuge. And so within this particular pursuit towards durable solutions, countries need to be practical in terms of what is possible. What are we doing, for instance, into our element of integration, just to access services? What are we doing in terms of ensuring, then this is the international community, repatriation? How is the situation in Somalia? What is the efforts of government and the United Nations in restoring peace in those particular areas? Because if there is no peace in that particular area, then we continue to have a flooding of refugees coming to our home countries. What are the number of resettlement quotas, for instance, that will happen from the Western countries? And so all this discussion on durable solution need to be pursued by all countries. And our stake as a country is the element of integration, for persons to be self-reliant and to be able to support themselves in the country and cease being a burden.
You know, when you have huge numbers of refugees coming to this country, I remember, it's in my living memory, it was from Somalia. Large numbers. Yes. And they were not just only, some even moved to Mombasa. But the problem when you have a war is you may be importing that war into your country. So the idea, yes, Eric has a point when he says containing refugees in one location, yes, has a commercial element to it, but it also has a security element to it. Because how do you know that all these people coming in are genuinely running away from a problem? They may not be running away. They may be just using the opportunity to infiltrate and come into your country. So when people are in a camp, you are able to determine who each individual is. But if they just sort of like come into the country and filter and get into normal life, do you really know who you will have let into your country?
I will tell you, with the benefit of information, that the contrary is true.
Please.
That persons who have been engaged in war, persons who have perpetrated war, one, they do not qualify for refugee protection. But then secondly, is that...
But how will you know?
Good. So the refugee status determination is a thorough process of identifying people and who they are. And so, but I admit that in sometimes, some of the people could then pass out in those particular aspects. But then when you look at it, concentrating people in a particular camp, without giving them a right to be able to feed themselves and rely on themselves, then you make them vulnerable. Once people then remain vulnerable, as you said, then they are actually easy targets of insurgents and recruitment to go out and engage in their home countries. But then if people are actually engaged, they have right to participate, they have other things that will keep them busy than staying in the camp and not knowing what the future holds for them by the end of the day. And so, refugee camps, in my own admission, they should be there to offer humanitarian assistance. Because, you see, when people run into the country, not everybody knows where they go. They have nothing to offer humanitarian assistance.
So it should be a stopgap measure, short term to medium term.
True, but then transition that for them to be able to support themselves, and they see it being a burden to the country and also to the international community by enabling them to be able to participate in the affairs of the country. Economic inclusion and social inclusion, and even be able to pay taxes in the countries where they find themselves. All of us here would admit that refugees from Germany during the Nazi and the Hitler, majority of them being Jews, found their way to the US. We all know the contribution that the Jewish community has done in the United States of America.
Right.
And so we begin asking ourselves...
In other parts of Europe.
True. And so we begin asking the question that what is the potential that we are letting go of refugees? If anything else, Kenya is a country of 50 million people. The number of refugees is about 500,000. When you do that particular percentage, is like 0.01%. And so asking ourselves, what is the motivation of us excluding this category of people who have run away from their country because they have a need, who have run away from the country because they need to survive, and therefore excluding them, making their situation worse because in their home country, because before disruption, they're actually working, feeding for their family, feeding for their children. But now their dignity is robbed of them because they have to develop on handout and they can't be able to provide for their countries.
Samuel, I want to throw this at you, Samuel. And I mean, you two have done a very good job of explaining to us the rights of a refugee and the rights that those refugees are currently being denied. Various ways, either in planning, in implementation, in very many ways in enforcement of the law. Samuel, is there an opportunity here for someone to go to court on behalf of the refugees and say, look, we have people who are recognized as residents of this country who are being denied those rights that you said, Article 43 rights?
Yes, someone can go to court, but within the same breath, we will not sign the optional protocol to the International Convention on Economic and Social Rights that then gives us the teeth to be able to litigate on this more effectively. But that notwithstanding, by virtue of Article 2.5, we've domesticated the international instruments that Kenya as a nation has ratified, that they form part and parcel of our laws. So that's why when we speak about commercialization of refugees, but then the question we ask ourselves is how do we treat Article 43? You know, what is our investment in terms of progressive realization of this right? You know, what is our investment in terms of policy directions that we are taking as a nation in terms of implementation of Article 43? So that when you come back and appraise whether there is positive movement in regard to Article 2.5 that domesticates international instruments, including the rights of refugees, and now implement that in relation to Article 43 on basic services for economic and social rights. That notwithstanding, I think we do not need to fall in the trap of the narrative that the plight of refugees has been commercialized. And this is because if we don't have a legal framework similar to the Refugee Act of 2021, then we will in most occasions be pushing them to the informal economy. And informality has got a problem because it brings around a lot of exploitation, and there is element of radicalization that can also set in as highlighted by Jermaine. That's why we need to make it part and parcel of the local mechanisms that promote development, be it in the context of planning documents, resource allocation, and being part of parcel of the even including Mbakumis and that's in association of the communities that they come from, so that then they self-appraise and they self-evaluate themselves and they screen themselves at that level and
But Samuel, there clearly seems to be a clear understanding of the responsibility of duty bearers, but also a neglect of those duties. How do we make these work? How do we get action on all these things? We know we have all the laws, we have understanding of these laws, but it's just not happening. And yet, there's a young girl, there's a young boy who is a refugee in this country who's not enjoying the benefits of these rights.
So action is within the invited spaces. And these invited spaces exist in numerous platforms, and we did indicate initially the planning documents as one of the platforms upon which inclusion and integration can be anchored upon. And we did say that when we develop planning documents, there are spaces of making proposals, there are spaces of holding government accountable in terms of reviewing the progress that's at the domestic level. You can also go to court as you did put it early as a request. At the regional level, there are various regional mechanisms, and lot of mechanisms that as non-governmental organizations and as communities you can engage with in terms of, doing parallel reports or shadow reports and engaging the various committees. Like you can engage the Committee on Economic and Social Rights, you can engage the Committee on Civil Political Rights, who will in turn engage government through, giving concluding observations on various policy measures that the state needs to take in order to ensure that there's progressive realization of these rights.
Jamin, what would be the preferred mode for settling this? You've talked about resettlement, you've talked about repatriation, and you've also talked about integration. Vis-a-vis the challenges which you see already, it would seem as though if you reintegrated them into society, all you're doing is taking the problems that would be experienced in the refugee situation and inputting them into society. So what would be the preferred way of going about this?
Thank you for that. To first borrow from what Sam had said is that it's true. We are grateful. We have been pushing for policy changes in the country for quite a period of time. And we are happy that we managed to have the Refugee Act in November of last year, after many years of pursuit, that now begins to give rights to refugees to be able to access these particular services. And so now working towards implementation of that particular act to look at the realization of these particular rights of refugees. In terms of durable solutions, and whether we would then be importing from the refugee camps to the rest of the society, is that the mode of integration has to put in place aspects of inclusion so that then the refugees are not a burden. Removing refugees from the camp, bringing them to Nairobi or any other particular area without looking at their financial inclusion, their social and their right to work, then it does not help them. Actually, I would not even advise us to move toward that particular route because they become more vulnerable, they become more exposed within the country if then we do not have these aspects in place. And that's why in the process of integration, we need to ensure that we offer them inclusion in these particular services at the county and the national level so that we can be able to enable them to participate just like the rest of us in this particular economy, to be able to feed their countries. In terms of repatriation, is that nations need to work with each other so that we do not have war in Tigray in Ethiopia, because when we have war in Ethiopia, we'll have an influx of refugees in the country. If we do not have stability in Somalia, if the elections in Somalia are not then done well, then we have an influx of refugees into the country. And so countries have a responsibility, either within themselves in terms of integration or even through collaboration with other particular countries, for us to be able to ensure that we have durable solutions for the refugee menace that we have had in this particular area.
Jamin, we thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Jamin Kuswania is the Rebuilding Advocacy Manager at the International Rescue Committee. It's an organization that has been in the country since 1992, like you said. And Samuel Orlando, who joined us via video link, is the Executive Director of Pamoja Trust. We are commemorating International Women's Day today, and this particular hour we're focusing on the plight of refugee women who are in this country. We've understood them, we've understood what they're going through, we've heard how many are in the country in various parts, in various camps or in urban areas within the community. They need to be integrated. We've been live on KTN Home. The conversation continues on SpiceFM in the next hour, and you can switch on to SpiceFM around the country or SpiceFM KE, YouTube and Facebook. It's now 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is Newsline Dennis Asato. Kenyans on social media continue to express their anger after a video of a young woman being harassed by bodaboda riders went viral even as the country joins the rest of the world in marking International Women's Day. In the latest development, 32 suspects have been arrested and 5 motorcycles impounded in connection with the attack on the motorist. Kenyans have called on the Inspector General of Police Larry Mutimbai and DCI boss George Kinoti to bring the culprits to book. Chief Justice Martha Koome broke a silence over the incident. According to the CJ, the perpetrators will be apprehended and processed through the criminal justice system. In a statement, Koome noted that Kenyan women, girls and indeed citizens must feel protected and safe in their own country. The National Transport and Safety Authority has also condemned the actions of the perpetrators of the Heinous Act and also rebuked any form of harassment and gender-based violence within the public sector. Charge.org, a leading platform for online petitions, is seeking signatures from Kenyans to have the border sector regulated. The petition has been shared widely on social media with thousands of Kenyans signing it. First Lady Margaret Kenyatta is leading Kenyans in celebrating International Women's Day 2022 at the Kenya School of Government in Kabete. These S32 persons that accosted the female motorist physically and sexually will be arraigned in court today. Now, ICJ Kenya has issued a statement condemning the incident. ICJ Kenya chairman Prota Sande said the commission's lawyers were ready to help the women get justice given that the case came to light during the International Women's Day celebrations. ICJ Kenya has called on the government to invest in institutions that address the interests of women through developing more policies and laws to protect them. Now, human rights activist Okoh has filed a case seeking to have persons with integrity issues blocked from vying in the 2022 general elections. Omtata says that he is concerned that many people adversely mentioned in theft of public funds want to vie for political seats. The Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission has already commenced preparations for the 2022 general elections. According to the petitioner, the best way to ensure good governance, including stopping the rampant theft of public funds and the general lack of transparency and accountability in the public sector, is to ensure that only people with integrity are elected into state offices at both the county and national levels of government. Now, Communications Authority of Kenya has assured that the transmission of results of the August 9th elections will be seamless as network coverage across the country has been strengthened. The agency headed by Ezra Shiloba revealed that the 3G and 4G network coverage in the country is now at 96%, hence making the transmission of the results easier. With the transmission of results in Kenya previous election being a significant challenge that has often fueled tension that follows after the polls, Olwero exuded confidence that things are bound to change during the high-stake polls in August. Now, KCPE exams entered the second day today. This morning, the candidates started with the science exam before taking Kiswahili and then the Kiswahili Insha. On the final day tomorrow, they will sit for the social studies and religious education. Newswire continues to wish all the students the very best as they write their exams. Now, the Ministry of Interior is now seeking the support of the National Lands Commission to recover prison services land lost to land grabbers in Yatta, Eldoret and Kapsabet. Speaking during a visit to the Prison Staff Training College in Ruiru, Kiambu County, Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i said Kenya Prison Services has lost huge chunks of land to rogue government officials. The CS further stated that the government is undertaking aggressive titling of prisons' land to secure it from grabbers. And finally, Russia has refused to turn up at the UN stop court where Ukraine asked for an immediate halt to Moscow's invasion. The no-show was criticized by the head of the International Court of Justice, while Ukraine said the empty Russian seat speaks loudly. Several dozen Ukrainian protesters shouted slogans including "Stop Putin" and "Stop Genocide," rallied outside the court's Peace Palace headquarters in The Hague. Kyiv filed the case shortly after Vladimir Putin's February 24th invasion, accusing Russia of having illegally tried to justify its war by falsely alleging genocide in Ukraine's Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Ukraine wants the court to take provisional measures ordering Russia to immediately suspend the military operations pending a full judgment in the dispute that could take years. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Assetto. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, continues on Thika Superhighway this morning, and it's going into the city quite hot and heavy. Still continues bumper-to-bumper action inbound, and also seeing the same thing on Kiambu Road today. Limuru Road, from that whole internal section, quite a lot of traffic this morning, and it's not a pretty sight. But we're just going to navigate through it, and hopefully we don't come out with too much of a scratch. Industrial area in and outbound, that continues on Lunga Lunga, then heading out towards the Likoni interchange, and then on to the southern bypass. Still some traffic there. Uhuru Highway into the city and then out towards Westlands. That is still a thing. Let's take a look at Mombasa Road really quickly. Maradima, that stretch, some traffic there coming through from the Weybridge, Sabaki, also just a little bit, dot here and there. Nothing too painful at this point. Let's keep an eye on things through Traffic Hour. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Talk to us there or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
It is 7 minutes after 9. The conversation continues. This is The Situation Room on SpiceFM. Also on SpiceFM KE on Facebook and YouTube. Talk about a headache and Cipladon.
Yeah.
And the 2 times working faster because it's effervescent.
I think I'm going to have to do that today.
Please do.
Well, I mean,
Why?
take some Cipladon.
Oh, really? You know what she's saying?
She's acquiring a headache.
She's planning to have a headache.
So you're taking that Cipladon, which now forestalls a headache.
City.
Did they even allow people to finish what they were saying in the first place?
Yes.
But you said, I think I'm going to have them today.
I think I'm going to have to take some today is what I said.
Yes. You're planning to have a headache.
No, I have one right now. And you're compounding the headache with these things that you're trying to say. But what was that you said about a wise woman holding her tongue?
Yes.
I'm just
That's
going
the
to
proverb.
do that.
She gets a headache.
Yes. You hold your tongue.
You get a headache.
Precisely. You're holding on things when you should let them out. So you suddenly find you have a headache. And if you continue, you'll also have a stomachache.
If you continue what?
So you're holding them in.
If you continue to behave this way, this headache will become a stomachache.
Well, you know it's going to be quick to get rid of the headache and the other 2 headaches that are trying to make it worse for me. Because you can get this effervescent paracetamol, which works twice as fast. Double the headache, twice as fast than the ordinary paracetamol that you could get around. So all you need to do is dunk it in some water and you should be all right. Relieving headaches, including migraine and tension. Cipladon is just sorting out my problems this morning. Period pains and relieving the fever, aches and pains of colds and flu. 500 mg sweetened with aspartame and 1000 mg, which is neutral. So you can, take your pick. It's available at all your good pharmacies and Chandarana supermarkets. If symptoms persist,
seek medical advice.
When Eric continues, then just seek medical advice.
So it's advisable to have Cipladon by the bedside. In case I have a headache, works twice as fast. City, today's proverb?
I mean, this headache-inducing conversation.
I'm tired. The thing wake me, Joe.
All right. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. I'm reading the proverb.
You're not.
Yes. She who lacks knowledge derides his neighbor, but the woman of understanding holds her tongue.
She who lacks knowledge derides her neighbor, but a woman of understanding holds her tongue. And the first one is?
An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips.
Okay. True, Nisawa.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking.
It's okay.
You know,
don't worry.
Because
It's okay.
I'm thinking of the sort of questions that sometimes. Okay, I should leave it. Huh?
It's okay.
No
It's
problem.
okay. Don't worry.
I have left.
We get it.
I have left.
We get it. Yesterday, there was a video that started doing the rounds on social media early in the morning. And it gained velocity and virality. And very soon, very many people had seen it, including the higher-ups in government. This is the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, National Security, the man in charge of security, the Inspector General of Police, and others. And it spurred them to action. And this is the video that was doing the rounds. In case you are new to Jerusalem, welcome. Please put your donkey there. We'll feed the donkey. The video that was doing the rounds yesterday was of this. An accident had happened on Wangari Maathai Road. And it involved a motorist and a boda person. And the motorist was a woman. Now, you know what normally happens in such cases. One boda person is involved in an accident. Others who are passing by will stop and they'll come and they'll, support one of their own.
They'll harass the living daylights out of
And
you.
in supporting one of their own, woe unto you, the person who was driving the vehicle. Because they will harass the daylights out of you, as CT is saying. And this is exactly what happened, plus more, to this particular woman driver. They opened the door, they were hitting on the particular lady, they started harassing her, they tore her clothes.
What?
Yes, they basically manhandled her and abused her in very many ways, groping her, and it was sexual abuse, just from casual observation of it. And there was a lot of shouting and, get out, toka kwa gari, get out of the car. She's still strapped onto the seat with her seatbelt. And she now, of course, in this whole confusion, she was screaming her lungs out. And one of the people who was there was walking around with the camera recording it. And you could hear some people saying, usimpige, 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 usimpige. While the others are also screaming, get out of the car. The short clip ends with a police officer who appears on the scene and comes right in front and blocks the boda people. Basically establishes a barrier between the lady and the boda attackers. Goes round on social media and everybody is baying for blood. Then the CS for Interior was also among those who were saying, baying for blood, action must be taken. Inspector General of Police, through spokesperson Bruno Shioso, said, yes, we are looking for these people. By the end of the day, some people had been arrested. And they said, these are the suspects who are in this particular area. Now, it brought in very many issues. And one of the things is this coincidence that it happens on the eve of International Women's Day. And it brings in the issue of the border menace, of road safety and security, of gender-based violence. All of them, one pot, one day, dealing with this. Now, of course, so many conversations come up. There's the one conversation about the border and how they operate on the roads. And it's not the first time that this issue has been highlighted. Many other cases have been highlighted very many other times before, including one by a general, a former head of the military, man who took Kenya's forces to Somalia and beat Al-Shabaab in Kismayu, was almost being beaten by boda boys in Nairobi. And he even wrote about it. General Julius Karangi said, I was involved in an accident. Same kind of treatment I received from Boda Boda, until the point when they saw military police officers coming, and then they realized, oh my goodness, tumeroga baya.
Even if we split this conversation into many parts, like you said, because obviously this issue then can be sectored into several conversations. Starting with that, this border thing, it is a menace. And there are people who have complained about it, like you said, those who you would think could have dealt with it, relatively easily because of the previous position that they may have held. But it is an issue. And it does seem as though there are members of this sector who do feel as if they're, law unto themselves. The way in which they operate on the roads, the way in which they have, if you ask me, in many cases, been allowed to operate on the roads in different manners. They take the law into their own hands on very many occasions. And you will hear any motorist will tell you, if you make the mistake, for example, of being in an accident with somebody who is on a motorcycle, the best thing you better do is tuck your tail between your legs, put your head down and make your way to the nearest police station. Because if you remain in that position, the likelihood of you being torn to pieces is very high, because these guys will come together like the forming of molecules in boiling water, and they will do whatever it takes to prove their point. A few short months ago, just where we reside, you find a group of 50 borders who took essentially the law in their own hands in the presence of police and killed 2 gentlemen and basically walked away scot-free. And the police came, picked up the bodies, took them wherever they were going to take them.
Is it the case of individuals whom they alleged had stolen?
Whom these borders had believed had stolen some other motorcycles. And so they said, these people look suspicious, that it turned out that they had keys or whatever, burnt these gentlemen to nothing, and then carried on. Police, in the presence of police, came, took the vehicles and went. So this is what I'm saying. A law unto themselves, and they feel as though they can do whatever they want, not just when they come together, but even on the streets. Unfortunately, here is where the higher percentage of these folks on the road can do whatever they want, and you are the one who has to Why is it that this is allowed in this manner? Look, the video we saw yesterday was very disturbing in terms of what they did to this young girl. However, it was not surprising to folks that the mob that behaved in this manner were border people. Because everybody kind of has, whether it's latent or presently conscious, that these folks are going to behave this way. Why have they been allowed for so long until it has become almost a household name that you expect these fellas to do this at any given time?
What exactly do they do? If we were to take their actions and look at them, these despicable things that we actually frown at and things we'd rather do, what is it that they do? They disregard the law.
Mm-hmm. Law unto themselves.
Yes. They take the law into their own hands when they can. And they also understand the power of numbers, because an accident, before you know it, there are 50 of them.
Yep.
It's like you blink.
Like a swarm of bees.
And they're there. And they're not seeking to find out what has happened.
So long as it's one of their own.
They've already decided.
Unataka kutuua. Nyinyi watu wa magari.
Yes. And you even wonder, the person who was hit or the motorbike is there someone concerned about the state of that person, the bike, the what have you?
No.
No, they are not. And if you ask them, it is a them against us. So long as you have a car, you are them. And if an accident occurs, even when one of them hits you, it is still your fault. Don't we see this thing mirrored in other aspects of our society? Same attitude. Same attitude.
Give an example.
People are supposed to build roads. You have a contractor who's supposed to be qualified. You have an oversight body full of engineers. An accident happens and they're saying, we're very sorry, but it isn't really our fault. It is somebody else's. So somebody else is actually the one in charge. A building collapses. A huge investment. The authority that is in charge of ensuring that they actually give the okay for that thing to take off. Say, there's somebody else to be blamed. They are the ones who have the authority to give the okay and also oversight. Suddenly there's somebody else. When you have Parliament making laws and allowing the government to borrow as they see fit, you have a member of Parliament in the studio and you talk to them and they tell you, these people. And you're thinking, hey, brother, Are you not among these people also?
No, these people are these people, Bwana.
Precisely. It's the them against us. When talking to the public, we are suffering. We are actually the ones who are being mistreated. We, the very leaders you elected, have become we. My friend, it goes up to the very top. People are campaigning, and it is we again. Us, the downtrodden, us, the ones. Now, you tell me, if you propagate a narrative of them against us, call it by whatever name you want, what do you think you're doing? If already there was a latent attitude in feeling that I am despised, I'm looked down upon, this is not what I wanted to do with my life, but here I am, and there are people who are looking down upon me. Eric and I were going about our business one day. He was giving me a lift. And we were traversing, this city is big. And there's a place where the police were doing what they normally do, stopping these cars moving forward. And while they stopped, Eric decided to drive slightly forward. Just slightly, yes, and stopped. There's a policeman in the truncheon. That fellow had been looking upset even before we got there. When we got there, he was already looking even more upset. Started pointing. So Eric asked him, hey, why are you so angry? He says, because you people are being disrespectful. I said, hey, Paul. The other policeman who was there, an elderly policeman, just waved us along and we went. There are very many Kenyans who believe they are disrespected. People don't value what they do. This riding a motorbike isn't what they had planned with their lives. This is not what they want to do. Being a matatu driver is not what they wanted. Being a tout is not what they wanted. So they have this pent-up energy and anger. You're always looking for somebody who has caused offense, or somebody who doesn't like you, somebody who looks down upon you, and somebody who represents that class of people who are responsible for the problems that you have. Now, it's become a national attitude. How often do you find drivers on the road giving others leeway? Everyone wants to move forward, even when it is clear there's a gridlock. Clear, there's a gridlock. Somebody still wants to cut in and join the gridlock. Somebody wants to move in and not give way. So when we look at the matatu drivers, and when we look at border drivers, and we look at the despicable behavior that was witnessed in the clip that we saw, if you want a close-up look of what we've become, there we are.
You're very good at connecting these things all the time and saying it's an example that has been set by the leaders. You blame everything on Moi.
Moi. No, I have to, because examples have to be set for people to look. If you have leaders who have no regard for the law, and it's not as though they don't, they talk about having regard, but you are in a jam. You hear, now that is supposed to be a horn.
I need you.
Okay? And then as you look...
CT, I didn't understand what that thing was.
Yeah, there are strobe lights coming towards you. Okay, and it's not a disco, it's broad daylight. There are these dark-colored cars, and there are around 3 or 4 of them.
And they do what?
And they're in the middle of the car. I'm in the middle of the road. So all of you have to move aside. For ambulances, we get. But these guys are not ambulance. And then, usually in these vehicles, there's something like 4 angry-looking men in dark suits pointing at you and telling you, the hand movement is vicious. Yeah. As in, move aside, move aside, move aside, move aside. Believe me, even if you didn't hear, you'll just move aside because you look at the guy, you move aside. Now, that is a leader, probably an elected leader going somewhere. So, what do you think, when I talk about the example, what do you think you're doing? Didn't you know where you were going? Couldn't you have started earlier?
Indeed.
Huh? Or did you decide suddenly in the middle of the road that this way you're going?
I was made late by the people.
Baba.
It is the
Wilson
people.
Airport is full of choppers. What you do,
take a chopper, then you go on social media
and people will say, you see how we are abusing money.
You're wasting our money.
Take a chopper so that you don't have to bother with that simple wananchi who are busy queuing so that we can follow traffic. You don't want to follow traffic like everybody else. So these rules are made for other people other than yourself.
So for us to sort out the problem of border borders, we first go and sort out
the top. Are you saying that this has been compounded and then fermented into people? So we see this reckless nonsense behavior that we saw yesterday that we have seen before.
Oh, I'm taking it there, yes.
It's just that what happened on Friday has happened many times before. It's not the first time. We've seen other people who've been taken we've seen other women who've been stripped in public because of one or another thing.
Yes.
It is Matatu touts today. It is Boda people tomorrow. Are you saying that this behavior that we exactly
you see
that this behavior starts from the leaders and then it's fermented into the people, and that is why
when laws are made and you have parliament making decisions that disenfranchises the poor, what do you think they've done? They've groped you, they've shouted at you, all these things that you're hearing, they've done all that to you in one move. And then when you complain, you say, but we reduced the price of bread. How many Kenyans eat bread on a daily basis?
Yes. Oh my God. Good Lord.
You're connecting them.
But they're connected.
What we are witnessing, because actually,
they are connected.
If you look at all those examples, like you just started counting, borders misbehaving, touts misbehaving, motorists misbehaving, even students burning schools and dormitories, parents
Where do you think it
kicking away the headmaster, parents slaughtering a bull and saying, tutakula ng'ombe ni yetu.
Yes, skuli.
Yes. Shule ni yetu.
What do you think?
That is all basically a reflection.
It's us.
Of who we are,
yes,
who we've become because of the leadership that we have.
Yes. Because the biggest thugs are our leaders. Biggest thugs.
So what you're saying, that people are following example?
Yes, they see it. Have you ever seen
and
where
there is no repercussion that has been seen?
But they realize there's no repercussion. The people who are telling you to move aside are policemen. These are supposed to be the custodians of the law. Now, you tell me, have you ever seen when those cars do their and then they move on, other people follow them?
But I tend to think...
to follow Boda.
Yes, exactly.
But see, I tend to think that human beings still have this element of bad behavior, regardless of leadership, regardless of it, that people are going to behave in a negative way at some point.
Yes.
Whether there's leadership to show you how to do it or not.
But now, with impunity, it's because of leadership.
So now it's been compounded.
I am seeing
now
what
it's
it
compounded.
is coming from.
It's compounded because you have somebody who just behaves the way in which they want. So then now it's in your mind, it's fermented as, okay, this we can get away with doing whatever we want. So it's going to play out in your daily operations.
Yes.
Did you hear when the conversation started happening? Oh, we need to regulate, we need to rein in the border business, we need to have a streamlined border operations like what Michuki did. There were those who were saying, but it's a what? It's a campaign year. It's an election year.
Yes.
Are we really going to? Why? Because the leaders know what they do with the borders.
They do.
They're the mobilizers.
Yeah.
The border are the first, people that they're going to call. The leaders deal with this. In fact, I was spending some time just because I remember there was a meeting that the Interior Ministry held with the border people. This was on the 12th of December last year, where the Interior PS, Dr. Karanja Kibicho, met with representatives of 1.2 million border riders, and they signed a commitment to the NCIC binding their members to ensure peaceful elections by resisting inducements and incitement to violence in political rallies and the 2022 elections. This is basically the government recognizing that, yes, when it comes to politics, these 1.2 million strong border riders can easily be used. They can easily be mobilized. Not can easily.
They are
being mobilized. This is a meeting that was happening. The leadership of the border in the country, they met at the Kenya School of Government to discuss, to tell them, guys, please, you know what they were doing is by doing that, now you cannot go back and start arresting the same leaders. You can't. Mohammed is calling in from Mombasa. Let's hear what he has to say. Good morning, Mohammed.
Good morning, Eric, CP, and Du.
Good morning, Mohammed.
Happy Women's Day.
To you too.
Look, there's a debate clearly that has been fanned and precipitated by the events of yesterday. What is the question is what I'm trying to understand. The problem about borders and in Mombasa, the tuk-tuks, the unruly behavior, is not something new. It has come up because of the absence of bus rapid transit, bus transit scheme. When I was young, we used to have Kenya bus that could carry people very efficiently. There were bus stops. There were all sorts of things. Today, I don't know when the last you guys were in Mombasa, but if you're in the CBD and you see the number of tuk-tuks vis-a-vis the number of tuk-tuk stages or bus stops, there doesn't exist a tuk-tuk stop. Therefore, by definition, if you want a tuk-tuk, you stop it where you are, they stop where you are, and you board. Everybody else behind is beholden to you, that individual who has to get on a tuk-tuk. If there is no infrastructure and laws in place, people are out to make money, the Kenyan hustle as they call it. Who's to blame? Is it not what CT is saying, that it is the leadership at the end of the day in one way or the other?
So you agree with CT that this is basically a manifestation of the problem of leadership that we have?
Not just 200% I agree with CT. Because if you are entrusted to public service, a selfless public service, I was speaking about this day before yesterday when I was unceremoniously cut off, that it is about the leadership. It starts at the top. It is the educated crowd that is dictating the narrative. So if it is that lot that is doing it, and those that follow, which are the masses, you have a moral obligation, if you're going to step up to leadership, to keep it aside from being a business and enrich you and your family, and step up and be selfless and do what you have signed up to do. Leadership was never about being selfish but human nature, the greed and the lust for power and all, of course it is. That is our animalistic tendency. But in reality, we cannot play the moral game when we want to and have the carnal game when we just want to have some fun. You can't have your cake and eat it, It's a basic discussion which is never, it is always, we shoot off in different tangents, but this is the reality of where we find ourselves.
Good points, Mohammed. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
0719-012-600. Do you agree with Mohammed? Do you agree with CT? Basically, what these two gentlemen are saying is what we witnessed with not just yesterday, but what we continually witness with Boda operators, what we witness with other sectors of our society, whether it's talking about the matatu touts, whether you want to talk about market traders, whether you want to talk about parents, whether it's about students. This is all a manifestation of the leadership that we have. It's because the leadership that we have does not provide that good example. This is the example that they've set, above the law. We can break the law. We can do this and the other. As long as it serves our purpose today, we'll go as far as we want to go. And that is why we are saying that is the conversation that we're having. Juma, why are you cutting my mic when I'm on? It is 27 minutes to 8 to 10. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take this break. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to SpiceFM.
To all the young women, the world is yours to discover and conquer. You are the future, leaders of your own world. Just like the women that came before you, it's your time to break the bias. Girls, run the world.
We run this mother.
You are so much more powerful than you think. Hold your head up high. Wherever my sisters left, I must take the mantle and run. Never give up. Keep fighting.
This week from the 7th to the 11th of March, join me, Yolanda Mulwa, and DJ Absolute on Sugar and Spice as we celebrate women, that is music by women, movies by women, and conversations that empower women.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done
in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
He's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Nafande hii umbo yako iko na
hii ni umba special.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Sunny conditions at 22 in Nairobi, highs of 28 and lows of 16. It's sunny in Nakuru at 20, highs of 29 and lows of 13. 18 degrees in Nyeri, who's the highs of 28 and lows of 12. 12 will also be the low in a sunny Eldoret at 21, going to highs of 28. At 29 degrees, it's partly sunny in Mombasa, highs of 32 and lows of 26. And we'll see a high of 32 in Malindi as well, currently at 29. Kisumu is sunny at 25, highs of 31 and lows of 19, while in Kakamega at 27, we'll see highs of 32 and lows of 15. Mostly sunny conditions in Kampala at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 19. The sun is also out in Dar es Salaam at 28, highs of 32 and lows of 26. Johannesburg is sunny at 20. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 15, while Lagos is sunny at 28, going to highs of 33. 34 will be the high in Kinshasa, where it's mostly cloudy at 26. Much warmer in Beijing, going into evening. Tuesday, it's sunny at 15, highs of 17 and lows of 2, -2, and sunny in Paris, highs of 13 today. 11 will be the high in London, where it's clear at 1 degree. That'll be today's low. It's mostly clear in New York. Coming into Tuesday, we'll see highs of 10 and lows of 3.
Spice up your life.
What is it all looking like when traffic hour is about to come to a head? We're looking at Langata Road, which is still quite something. Lunga Road has been giving off that jam-packed vibe ever since morning, and it's still continuing. So let's just watch out for that one. Moving slowly along, but you should be able to get off to the Likoni interchange and onto the Southern Bypass, and then you'll be all right. Raila Odinga Way still continues with some traffic. Ngong Road is an absolute mess in some parts. We're getting onto Valley Road and into Kenyatta Avenue, into the city. Slow as well. All right, Thika Superhighway. Are we doing better? Absolutely. Coming past the Utali Drift, just past Survey, you should be all right as you get onto Muranga Road. And then coming off Kiambu Road, traffic is thinning out. So this is a good thing, as it is on Limuru Road as well. A good morning. I think so. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how we can talk through the morning. Text 40127. Let's keep things moving.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Continues, and we want to hear from you. 0719012600. We are talking about the menace in the country, not just border. It all this misbehavior that we see. City is saying, look to the leadership, and you'll see the problem where the problem is. Examples again. Start. Example number one of government.
Example
of leadership.
Example number one is how our laws are put into practice.
Mm-hmm.
We are told by every elected leader how their entire focus is on the interest of the simple man, the mwananchi, that is us. However, the manifestations of it is rather different. Because when you look at things that ought to be center stage in our planning and thinking, like drought, which we keep dealing with, or floods, whether it is at the county level or the national level, you are telling me that parts of the country where the bulk of our livestock is, and which have counties, and which have agricultural ministries that are devolved, you are telling me that in all these years, these people have never been able to consider the concept of a holding place so that when you have a situation like the one of a drought, you know where to take the cattle. So that you're told people have lost 50% of their livestock. That's their livelihood, that's their wealth. And every county has money, and that money is devolved into the ministries that exist within those counties. On a daily basis, we see ambulances blaring that horn or the siren. They are given way. Then we have the other. This one is not an ambulance, it's just a menace. People who are supposed to be high-ranking officials and who have chase cars ask you to move aside so that they can pass. It's impunity. It is a single-lane road. They're creating a third lane, which is them. And usually once they have passed, and as I said, the people asking you and pointing viciously and violently to move aside are police officers. The moment they pass, the people who follow them immediately either matatus or motorbikes, but people follow them. Now, you think this isn't setting an example?
So, we can now draw parallels between that kind of behavior and those who are watching this kind of behavior on a regular basis.
Yes.
And that's why you say, matatu touts, for example, then will see somebody walking along the street and be able to beat that person to within an inch of their life. That's why border people will see somebody who had caused an accident, which she already acquiesced and said, look, this was my fault. However, they can then decide, if not for police who showed up at that point, probably would have removed her from that vehicle and done the unspeakable to her.
They were heading in that direction.
Absolutely. So are we saying that because of this compacted watching of this behavior, conditioning, more or less, is what we are saying, that is what then gives the leeway to this kind of nonsensical behavior that we are then seeing?
When you have the numbers, you can do what you like and get away with it. And in times past, they have. Okay? If people in leadership are getting away with it, they are examples that I'm giving in a general sense of the word. How many other people do they see or know? And they understand. This morning when we were talking, there's this lady who spoke to us, Ednah. Okay? She has a very important role. Okay? She calls herself a feminist.
Yep.
But there's something she said about the example. She gave example of her own brother. Said her own brother was following the example of the father. The father, she says, at some point was violent towards their mother.
Right.
Her brother, same thing. Until they had to sit him down and told him, excuse me, chief, this is something you're not going to do.
We cannot be fighting this fight. Then you, who is one of us now.
You see, the power example is exhibited in our lives on a daily basis.
I hear you, CT, because the father didn't necessarily sit down with his son and say,
this
is what you will do when you get married. You start beating your woman like this.
And this is what you need to beat her properly. No, he didn't do that.
He saw it. Obviously, because he was in that situation regularly and learnt it. So now, whether there was a latent or practiced consciousness, it was there.
How do you teach impunity?
Example.
Again,
Precisely.
Example. Let's go back to the phone lines. Mohammed of Mwakijembe, Mr. Moral Values.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, baba. Uko mzima?
Mimi nashukuru mzima.
Very good.
Tunashukuru kukusikia.
Nashukuru wazee na kina mama hapo studio.
Santi.
You know, when you want to see yourself, you go to a mirror. And our leaders are the reflection of us, and we are the reflection of our leaders. Now, always the Almighty Lord, will always pick a good leader when the community is good. When the community is bad, the Almighty Lord will pick the same according to the community to be led. And all this is because of the moral rot we have in society. That is the same thing I'd be preaching day in, day out. And I've been hearing experts on human behavior, especially BBC. They always come with different aspects of human behavior. But not ever once have I ever heard human behavior experts discussing on moral values. I've been requesting you several times to bring us an expert on human behavior to come and dig and see how we can overcome this problem of moral rot. And that is the only problem. And the remedy is to inculcate moral values in society. Then we'll overcome 95% of our problems.
What will it take?
So
how long will it take, Mohammed, to inculcate this moral values?
Even if it is a generation, but at the end, we will change. Even since we got independence to date, how many years? 60 years plus? Where are we? You know, there's that saying, Mwalimu once gave a good saying, however the Makalio are in hurry, they will always remain behind. So if that is the case, we are always in hurry, but we are always behind, like the Makalio. The only thing we can, even if it's one generation, nothing comes easy.
Yep, but it's got to be done.
So you have to work for it.
Asante sana, Mohammed.
That is the solution. Now, please, again, I request you, get an expert on human behavior to come and discuss this issue of moral values in human beings. Please, I request you.
Safi kabisa.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Zachary.
Oh, good morning, people.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I don't know. First of all, I apologize. I told you I follow the you on YouTube in the evening, yeah? And there was this Friday that I'm very, very particular about and concerned about my grammar, spoken, written. I apologize to you, to the listeners, because I somehow confused the word duplicity and duplicitous, yeah? I actually apologize. Profusely. Now, let me go poetic and say this, yeah? Especially to that young lady who went through the indignity, yeah? That let her not be a man. In fact, let her not actually, when next time she gets into a problem and there are men next to, to her, let her not be going to them. I assure her that that small group, that group of goons does not in any way represent little men like Baba Izera here, who calls him and who associates herself with the rebels, okay? Let me tell her that those men are not strong. There was a time not long ago that they relied on women from being taken to the toilet, from being moved allowed, they relied on women, and so only women. So they are just pretentious. They are not strong in any way. And I assure her that group does not represent the views of men or the general men who call themselves women. Now, let me say this, yeah? I actually agree with you, the panelists, that there is pent-up anger, Mr. Eric. And this anger has been elevated to, to a certain levels by this idea of the Hazra and the Hazra and the what?
The dynasty.
The dynasty, yeah. You yourself, you are a dynasty. So you have to be very careful when you are moving around town, okay?
Who?
You, because if you could afford it, you would you are.
Yes,
So you representing the dynasty there, you should know that this thing has caused, the divide. There is this person who is always talking about the Mama Boga, the border guy. Let me say that person or those people who are propagating that ideology, I don't know the hole they are putting us into, all of us. And I told you this, Mr. Eric, yeah? Once you are able to afford a quarter of some meat every day, and probably it has been a prescription by the doctor that you have to take meat if you want to against like we have Mamazarat, yeah?
You are under prescription?
Yeah, I have to make sure that after every and you know what, Mr. Eric, yeah? In fact, I think it was last week. Somebody asked me, how do you people afford to take meat after every food? And it is a quota, just a quota. And probably you are going to take it on credit. So that person, you are the dynasty, okay? And therefore, when this thing has been elevated to those high levels, Mr. Eric and the panel, and I can hear you laughing, that it is not a laughing matter, actually.
Actually, it is a laughing matter.
It's really funny, Zachary.
You are the dynasty, okay?
Okay.
So, let me say this, finally. We must play. And let me tell these guys who are calling themselves the border. Kindly do not test the power of the government. It is so strong. And once it size on you, everyone will now start saying, this is now so much disappearance of let them not count the government, actually. It is stronger than them.
Okay.
It is wiser than them, and it is wittier than them, okay?
Okay. Sawa.
Let us all behave, actually. Thank you. A nice day.
Cheers, man.
Thanks, Zachary.
Jackie.
Good morning.
Good
How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Mzuri sana.
Hmm?
The clip yesterday was heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought is what happened to our men? Because I agree with Mohammed. It's like, we've got serious social rot, moral rot. And sadly, it starts with the family. You have so many fathers who are dating their daughters. The girls, the daughters' age. You have absentee fathers. You have abusive fathers. And the mothers are not even assisting because they are allowing this to happen. Then you've got the moral parts about, we used to be raised by a village. Nowadays, you can't touch somebody's child, you can't admonish somebody's child because they'll come for you. And yet, if initially we used to be corrected by any adult, and that created respect. But nowadays, you look at Twitter, you have children insulting people who are their grandfather's age because they can hide behind Twitter. You have young men who feel that it's their right to murder girlfriends who reject them. You have girls who feel that they are entitled to a man's money, a man's property, just because they are girls. You have politicians who stand in front of masses and insult each other, and they are cheered on because that is what they are looking for. So they are normalizing some of these social ills, and what do you expect at the end of the day? These people who are in the masses are going to grow up knowing that it's okay to insult your leaders. It's okay to insult your elders.
Elders.
So, as much as it starts with the family and the society, the politicians have a huge role. They are busy making laws to minimize the sentence if they are caught up in corruption, instead of putting up laws that will protect the society.
Catch 22 then here, Jackie.
Yeah.
Like you've said, so this is a cancer that permeates across society.
Yes.
And then this society that believes, that has normalized all these things, ends up electing these leaders who get elected knowing that they're expected to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
So how shall we change?
I've said before, Eric, the problem for me in terms of how we vote is this party. Because a party is going to come and decide to nominate whoever they want, the person who is going to agree for his strings to be pulled. They are not going to put up somebody who's got his own mind. So the parties, to me, are the biggest problem here. And I've always said, if individuals who just stand as independent candidates, we are more likely to get quality leaders rather than these people who are recycling themselves. Then depending on which sycophant there is, that is the one that is going to be presented to Kenyans.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's sad, very sad.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Don't lose hope.
No, we keep praying.
Good. Have a lovely day.
And we try and raise the proper people.
Have a lovely day.
Asante, you too.
How do we get out of this then? If it's all because it's being led by the leaders. So how do we get the right leaders in place?
These leaders,
because the leaders are reacting to what they're expected to do. They're playing to the gallery.
Yes and no. Because you see, you don't need to go very far back into history to see where certain problems began. A lot of the times we are reacting to an eventuality rather than the root cause. You see, if you ask yourself, why do leaders go about business the way they do, they'll tell you, well, when we were elected, the citizenry and the population expect us to do this, and the other. Yes and no. The materialism and the culture that surrounds it and everything that goes with it, the ethos, if it takes root in the life of a community, then it drives everything. Everything else now is a way of explaining or moralizing or ethicizing what it is that you're doing. But the push, you see, if you want to understand what it is that an older generation has done, look at the children. Look at the generation of their children. Forget them. They will say all sorts of things. Oh, I did this, I tried this. Look at the children, the product. That tells you the end result of what it is that they were doing. Because children, the thing that children do more than anything else is they observe. In an African setting, in a human setting, they observe. From the time they're little, when they can't speak, they are observing. And they're internalizing it. Now, you may set these rules in your household and moral rules. If you're doing the complete opposite, well, something is going to happen that will eventually bring out what it is that these children learnt. Now, let them grow up a little bit more in the 21st century, in the communication age. My friend, a lot of things will be out of your control completely. There are things that someone will do, not because they were taught, not because you taught them, but again, peer influence comes in. But at the foundation of what we're speaking about is a community that turned everything else and moralized quantity. Meaning, if you look at the way we judge each other, we quantify each other. Even if you are 20 years old and you have money, you're a mzee.
Yeah.
Because mzee is a term of respect. It has nothing to do with your age.
Nothing to do with your age.
It's what you have. And nobody cares how you got it. It's no longer an issue how you got your money. So you have it. Even if you have it for a brief period, you have it.
I almost hear you saying that everything needs to be raised down to the ground and then focusing to start from scratch.
Usually that is how you set this thing up. Actually.
Exactly. Because if you're looking at the child again, looking at the stages of life, when they go through the imprinting and all of that, and then what happens? At some point, you take them to a formalized institution of learning. Essentially, now you want to build on that. Or you want to say, okay, so everything that you've taken in for the last 3 years, scratch that and let's start again. And so for me, for looking at solutions, because it's so far gone, right?
It is.
It doesn't matter whether it's man or woman, that you're going to have people who are being ravaged in this manner. It doesn't matter who it is. It's across the board. It's not even gender specific, this kind of hooliganism that we see. It's not, right? So for me, you're not going to go and start coaxing the problem out of people. It's got to be raised to the ground. Something dramatic has to happen for people to realize where we really are. It's got to be.
And remember, that one of the things that we seem to have lost is a very simple sense of right and wrong. Relativity has, this is relative to this. If you look back and people talk about the retrogressive past, it wasn't all retrogressive. There were retrogressive elements with hindsight that we can look at. But by and large, if you look at the positivity, you had definitive issues. You knew. Like there are certain friends whom you had, you never mentioned at home and you never took them home. You knew.
Mrs. Okoh.
You knew.
No.
We'll continue this conversation in coming days. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Remember, Cipladon is
an effervescent paracetamol that allows you get over your pain in 2 times faster than other paracetamols would allow you to do. Dunk it in the water, 500 mg in the aspartame sweetened, or 1,000 mg for your neutral taste at all good pharmacies and Chandara supermarkets. Remember, if this headache continues, seek medical advice.
City, the day's proverbs.
An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. Embrace or flee, your choice. She who lacks knowledge derides her neighbor, but the man of understanding holds her tongue.
Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation today. Join us again tomorrow, Wednesday, the 9th day of March, 2022. We'll be here bright and early from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eric Latiff, CT Muga and Okoh wishing you a lovely day at 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is Newswire Dennis Aseto. President Uhuru Kenyatta and the First Lady Margaret Kenyatta will lead the nation in commemorating International Women's